Chapter 804. He used a special method to fuse his immense spiritual power with this syllable. He let out a special syllable that was as deep as an earthquake, thereby causing his enemy's spiritual power to shake. If he continued to practice it, Wang Feng felt that he could really cause the earth to shake with just a soft syllable. However, that was too mystical. It was probably very difficult to achieve in the Douluo world. However, there would definitely be a chance. As long as Wang Feng continued to practice according to his thoughts, he would definitely be able to do it. He felt that this tremor syllable could achieve that mystical effect. Right now, it could only cause the two titled Douluo's spiritual power to shake for a few seconds. However, it was enough for Wang Feng. Most importantly, Wang Feng felt that he could practice a syllable with this method. He could infuse his immense spiritual power into this syllable and release a special sound that could kill his enemies. As it was based on the 9 syllables, Wang Feng decided to name this spiritual attack that he had slowly figured out as the chaotic 8-note. The concept of chaos was when the chaotic green lotus stood in his sea of consciousness and released a syllable every time. The chaotic green lotus would stir his sea of consciousness and resonate with it. Wang Feng felt that it was a little interesting. It was as if the chaotic green lotus was alive and had its own consciousness. If the chaotic green lotus was real, it would be normal for it to have its own consciousness. After all, it was protected at this level. It was already the strongest life form in the universe. However, this was only a martial soul. As for why it was called 8 notes, it was because it sounded good. In fact, Wang Feng wasn't sure how many more notes he could create. This was only the first one, and he hadn't practiced it thoroughly yet. He could only name it as such for now. This was why the seahorse and sea ghost Douluo were only stunned for a few seconds by the tremor syllable. It was enough for Wang Feng to get rid of them temporarily. He didn't even need to use any other soul skills. If the two of them didn't have any soul power to resist, they wouldn't be able to withstand any of his punches. In fact, as Wang Feng had just created the tremor syllable, there were still many imperfections. It wasn't difficult for them to defend themselves. However, they had never heard of the tremor syllable before. This was why they didn't think of it. They probably thought that Wang Feng was going to sing a song. Who knew that a soft syllable would be so powerful? The two of them flew back and landed in the sea of consciousness. Only then did they regain their senses. However, right at this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly descended from the sky. Wang Feng glanced at it and frowned slightly. A man radiating divine light stood in midair. His entire body was covered in azure scales, and his palms were real dragon claws. He also held an ice-blue spear in his hand. 9 soul rings slowly rose from his body. All of them were black, and the last one was red. His soul power undulations were at rank 98. His aura was incomparably powerful. He looked like a dragon warrior from ancient times. What kind of martial soul fusion skill is that? Wang Feng was rather surprised. He was still the sea dragon Douluo, but his aura and soul power fluctuations had changed drastically. Martial soul fusion skill, Dragon Battle Berserker. There seemed to be streams of water flowing through the sea dragon Douluo's eyes, and his eyes glowed with divine light. This martial soul fusion skill was more like the fusion of their martial souls to form a brand new sea dragon Douluo. Even his soul rings had changed, which meant that his soul skills had completely changed. This was the result of the Sea Dragon Douluo and Sea Spear Douluo's soul rings fusing. The difficulty of this martial soul fusion skill is extraordinarily high. Wang Feng squinted his eyes. His soul power rank had increased, and his soul rings and soul skills had changed. The current Sea Dragon Douluo should be able to exchange blows with Possessi. It was indeed a martial soul fusion skill. Against such a powerful opponent, it would be inexcusable if he didn't use his soul skill. The new Sea Dragon Douluo looked at Wang Feng, and his 9 soul rings lit up. Without saying anything, he attacked Wang Feng. 8th Soul Skill, Sea Dragon Battle Spear. The Sea Dragon Douluo roared furiously, and the spear in his hand changed instantly. A cold aura instantly locked onto Wang Feng, and the spear seemed to have mutated. This spear was the Sea Spear Douluo himself. The spear gradually grew bigger, and became twice its original size. The Sea Dragon Douluo was also enveloped by a layer of golden blue light, as if he had entered a special state. His aura became stronger once again. This should be a status-type soul skill that could increase all of his attributes and enter an extremely powerful state of battle. It was similar to the Super Saiyan transformation in the Dragon Ball. However, it was only a soul skill, so it wasn't that powerful. A small cauldron instantly appeared in Wang Feng's palm as he attacked. His entire body was covered by a layer of icy blue light, which even had a tinge of green. It was really a passive soul skill, Ice Reflection. The Sea Dragon Douluo was like a spear that came from the west, and directly pierced Wang Feng's chest. Clang! The moment the spear pierced Wang Feng, it carried a huge impact force, and caused Wang Feng to glide backwards. Instantly, he slid to the shore, and was only inches away from the sea. However, there was only a red mark on Wang Feng's chest, and he wasn't injured at all. At the same time, countless icicles followed the spear and quickly covered the Sea Dragon Douluo's entire body. Ice Reflection was a passive soul skill, and Wang Feng didn't use it much because he was too strong. However, its strength had never been reduced. On the contrary, as Wang Feng's strength increased, so did his soul skills. However, the weird thing was that when the countless icicles covered the Sea Dragon Douluo's body, they were blocked by the layer of blue light on his body. Following this, the Sea Dragon Douluo shook his palm and shattered the icicles on the spear. Status immunity? A weird look flashed across Wang Feng's eyes. When the Sea Dragon Douluo's spear didn't have any effect, Wang Feng's torso lit up slightly, and an icy-colored mysterious light struck the Sea Dragon Douluo's body. Spirit Seal. The weird thing was that the icy-colored mysterious light immediately disappeared when it came into contact with the light barrier on the Sea Dragon Douluo's body. Ha ha ha, the Sea Dragon Spear has given me immunity to all control-type soul skills. This includes all kinds of status effects. The Sea Dragon Douluo shouted, Wang Wu, if you want to control me, I advise you not to waste your effort. Your defense is very strong, but it's impossible for you to defeat me. Wang Feng squinted. This was equivalent to a permanent dominating body. He couldn't underestimate it. He turned his palm, and countless sharp blades formed Xianming flying swords. They instantly turned into 3 long swords. One of them landed in Wang Feng's hand, while the other 2 floated in midair. Wang Feng took a step forward and charged into the air towards the Sea Dragon Douluo. The Sea Dragon Douluo's flight was very special. Beneath his feet was a cloud formed by water, which allowed the Sea Dragon Douluo to fly freely in the air. End of this chapter. Chapter 805. 7 Killing Swordplay. Wang Feng wanted to fight in close combat, to see how strong the Sea Dragon Douluo was. At the same time, the other 2 swords in midair unleashed the first 2 moves under Wang Feng's control. Wang Feng himself unleashed the last move, which was also the most powerful move. The 3 moves combined into one was extremely powerful. The Sea Dragon Douluo frowned slightly. He understood that this move wasn't simple. It was very powerful. Of course it was powerful. After all, the 7 Kills sword was the sword Douluo's signature move, and its offensive prowess didn't lose out to anyone. Even though the 7 Kills sword technique only had 3 forms, each one of them was extremely explosive. 6 Soul Skill. Sea Dragon Scale Armor. The Sea Dragon Douluo roared, and his pitch-black soul rings lit up. The scales on his body quickly split apart and covered his entire body. At the same time, they formed a greenish-blue barrier. This was a very powerful defensive soul skill. A true sea god dragon could soar tens of thousands of meters under the sea without any pressure. Naturally, this had a lot to do with the scales on his body. Sword net, sword marks, and the net formed by the last move struck the sea dragon Douluo. In the next moment, the sea dragon Douluo's expression changed. This Wang Wu's attack was a little too strong. The main thing was that every move contained terrifying strength. Besides the 7 killing swordplay, this terrifying strength, fortunately, the sea dragon Douluo was still able to withstand it. Seeing this, Wang Feng roughly knew how strong the sea dragon Douluo was after his martial soul fusion skill. How should he put it? He was between rank 99 and rank 98. But in this place, he was comparable to a rank 99 exceptional Douluo. He was already very strong. After testing, Wang Feng shook his head. The sea dragon Douluo frowned slightly. He didn't understand what Wang Feng meant. But in the next moment, Wang Feng flipped his hand and the cauldron of heaven and earth appeared again. Divine light of heaven and earth! Wang Feng roared. The rainbow light struck the sea dragon Douluo. I've already said that I'm not affected by any debuffs in my current state. The sea dragon Douluo shook his head. Why are you wasting your time? But before he could finish his sentence, the rainbow light landed on the sea dragon Douluo's body. In the next instant, the sea dragon Douluo's expression changed drastically. The cosmic divine light was the ability of the cauldron of heaven and earth itself. After Wang Feng's soul power had undergone a mutation, the abilities of all 6 forms had been strengthened. Naturally, the same was true for the divine light of cosmos. As a result, the scales on the sea dragon Douluo's body fell off in front of everyone's eyes, and his true body quickly disintegrated. At the same time, a figure rushed out of the spear and landed on the sea with a pale face. It was the sea spear Douluo. The light emitted by the spear also quickly disappeared. In the end, it turned into an ancient, rusty spear. The martial soul fusion skill was instantly broken. In an instant, the whole place was in an uproar. Tang San and the others were still fine. They barely knew that Wang Wu's small cauldron could emit a special 7-colored light that could reduce the quality of martial spirit. But for the 7 holy pillars or even the possessi, they had never seen Wang Feng use it before. In fact, Wang Feng had yet to use the heaven and earth cauldron since he had arrived at the Divine Sea Island. Most of the time, he used the innate 5-element flags. No matter which test it was, Wang Feng had never used the cauldron of heaven and earth. After Wang Feng changed his soul power to activate it, the cauldron of heaven and earth naturally became stronger. The divine light of cosmos could even break martial soul fusion skills directly. Sigh, I'm getting stronger and stronger. Wang Fengxin sighed. I used a little bit of my strength and the 7 holy pillars were defeated. But my chaotic 8 sounds, I feel that there's a lot of room for improvement. Wang Feng had always liked things that he created himself. Because these things, how should he put it? They were his after all. Even if he really left this world, they wouldn't disappear. Unlike soul skills, Wang Feng wasn't sure if these soul skills would still exist in other worlds. Furthermore, his own creation was indeed strong. More importantly, there was a lot of room for improvement. It was limitless. In addition, Wang Feng's current physical strength and intelligence were able to support his own creation. He said that he used a little bit of his strength, and it really was a little bit of his strength. The most important thing was that Wang Feng directly saw through the opponent's tactics. So he only used this little bit of strength, and it was easier for him to fight. At this moment, the sea dragon Douluo and sea spear Douluo fell into the sea. I've won. Wang Feng looked at the 7 people in the sea and shook his head. At the same time, Tang San and the others outside the sea were silent. He's too strong, Ma Hongjun trembled. 7 against 1 and it ended up like this? 100,000-year soul skill directly caused 2 titled Douluo to lose their ability to fight. And that mysterious low sound he released just now instantly caused the other 2 titled Douluo to lose their ability to fight. The 2 holy pillars, Sea Dragon and Sea Spear, can't even defeat him after their martial soul fusion? His rainbow divine light can't even be immune to status effects? Is he that strong? This battle could be said to be exciting. The 7 of them definitely enjoyed watching it. From the moment the 7 holy pillars formed their formation to the moment they executed their tactics, everything had proceeded in an orderly manner. It could be said that it developed step by step according to their plan. There were also more and more tricks up their sleeve. But unfortunately, this Wang Wu still seemed to have endless tricks up his sleeves. Something's wrong. At this moment, Dai Mubai looked at the sea in the distance. It seems like the situation has changed. The 7 holy pillars haven't lost yet. Hearing this, everyone was stunned and hurriedly looked over. They saw that in the sea, the 7 sea Douluo who had fallen into the sea were connected to each other in a strange position. Strange soul power undulations flowed back and forth in this enormous sea. The injuries on their bodies were rapidly recovering. Their auras were gradually becoming stronger. Wang Feng frowned slightly and immediately realized it. They're absorbing the power of the sea in the sea and borrowing the power of the sea in the sea to recover quickly. They're also using the holy pillar in the center to draw on the power of the sea. This sea is indeed not simple. Is it a great killing weapon? The sea demon Douluo's injuries could be seen with the naked eye during the battle just now. At this moment, the sea dragon Douluo suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Wang Feng with a burning gaze. Wang Wu, your strength has exceeded our expectations. But it's a pity that this place is a true holy pillar. This is the sea in the sea. This is the territory of the 7 holy pillars. It's impossible for us to lose here. As long as we rely on the holy pillars and the sea in the sea, we can control the sea. We will have the power to control the sea. In this battle, the biggest mistake you've made is to throw us into the sea. You're just indirectly helping us. After speaking, the 7 of them released the same aura at the same time, causing the entire sea to tremble slightly. The aura of the sea was rapidly condensing and giving off a majestic pressure. However, is that so? Wang Feng said leisurely, "How do you know that I didn't send you into the sea on purpose? I can control the power of the sea too." Hearing this, the 7 holy pillars were stunned. At this moment, Wang Feng suddenly leaped high into the air. His 100,000-year left leg bone was emitting a scarlet light. Soul skill, Jade Qilin Tsunami. Wang Feng's left leg shook, and in an instant, the entire sea seemed to be boiling and turned into a boundless tsunami that rose up. P.S. 7 chapters, this chapter ends. Chapter 806. Haizhonghai wasn't big. It was more like a lake than a sea. But at this moment, the lake seemed to have flipped 180 degrees. All the seawater rose up and formed a ring-shaped tsunami current. The scene was spectacular. The 7 sea Douluo in the sea seemed to be drifting along with the current. They were rolling crazily in the tsunami current and couldn't even maintain their basic bodies. This wasn't an ordinary tsunami. It was controlled by someone. Any living creature in the tsunami would be hit by the seawater. It was an all-pervasive pressure. Wang Feng's kick was so terrifying. The skill of the 800,000-year leg bone was naturally powerful. The Jade Qilin Tsunami was a soul skill that could affect a mere Haizhonghai. Even if it was in the sea, it could overturn the sea and overturn the cloud. In terms of attack area, it was thousands of meters long. As long as it was in the sea, the Jade Qilin Tsunami was invincible. Wang Feng could also achieve a certain effect with the blue flag, but the blue flag focused on protection and water resistance. It was still a little difficult to create such a power. Furthermore, the Jade Qilin Tsunami was a soul skill that came with the 800,000-year leg bone. It was a proper offensive soul skill. Its power was still worthy of recognition. The 7 holy pillars, who were struggling in the tsunami current, were all stunned. Especially the sea dragon Dalu. This was Haizhonghai. With the help of the sea dragon holy pillar, He was the one who could control Haizhonghai. How did it change? When could he control Haizhonghai? Could it be that the holy pillars had betrayed him? Of course not. The 7 of them actually saw Wang Wu's left leg bone light up the moment the tsunami rose. It was still the same 100,000-year soul bone. They thought that the other party would be able to use that teleportation soul skill again. But they didn't expect it to be a soul skill related to the sea. The 7 of them were already injured to varying degrees and hadn't fully recovered. At this moment, they were dizzy from the tsunami current and couldn't even maintain their basic balance. They were in an extremely sorry state. The sea dragon Douluo wanted to use Haizhonghai's power to recover and surprise the other party. But he didn't expect the other party to have predicted this and turned the tables on him. In fact, Wang Feng didn't plan to send the 7 of them into the sea. Wang Feng didn't intend to use the Jade Qilin tsunami. Unfortunately, the 7 of them could even use a special ability to recover in the sea. He could only use the Jade Qilin tsunami to deal the final blow. It had to be said. With this stomp, the sea was overturned and a 100-meter tsunami was formed. It was really cool. At this moment, the spectators were also staring blankly at this scene, unable to say a word. The tsunami that rose from the sea and the roaring torrents gave people a feeling that no one could defy it. What a powerful soul skill! Everyone was deeply amazed by this scene. But what was even more shocking was that he didn't expect the other party to be able to calculate to this extent. This Wang Wu is also smart, right? Bai Qinxiang could not help but say, did he already foresee this? After all, the 7 holy pillars were able to borrow the power of the sea to attack. Thus, they would definitely be able to borrow the power of the sea to heal themselves. He must have thought of this a long time ago, so he deliberately knocked the 7 people into the sea. However, the 7 holy pillars didn't know that the other party had such a soul skill. They wanted to use it to counterattack, but they were killed by Wang Wu. Could it be that Wang Wu had already foreseen the outcome of this battle from the beginning? They had to raise their heads in order to see the top of the blue sea. Listening to Bai Qinxiang's words, everyone couldn't help but think of Wang Wu's leisurely and carefree expression. That must be it. That's too abnormal. Ma Hongjun couldn't help but complain. I feel that the longer we stay on the Sea God's Island, the more dangerous it is. This Wang Wu's strength is comparable to Senior Possessi's, right? If he targets us, I'm afraid we won't have any hope. Everyone was silent. No, he can't be compared to him. Tang San shook his head and said, Senior Possessi's strength is unimaginable on the Sea God's Island. No matter how strong Wang Wu is, he can't be compared to Senior Possessi on the Sea God's Island. However, it's really easy for him to attack us. Even the 7 holy pillars were defeated. And they were defeated so thoroughly. Although the 7 holy pillars couldn't defeat Possessi, it was enough to prove his strength. The main thing is that the opponent's combat talent is too strong. Tang San said in a low voice, this Wang Wu is someone I've seen before. He's not inferior to Big Brother Feng in the slightest in terms of combat talent and tactical calculation. Back then, Brother Feng only used a set of external soul bones and didn't use any soul skills to reach the finals. This Wang Wu in front of us, he didn't show much of his true strength. When he ascended to the 1001st floor and fought with the deep-sea demon whale, there was a big difference. His aura was quite different. Tang San's words reminded everyone. In fact, Wang Feng only used 3 or 4 soul skills. His domain was useless. He only used the power of the blood mark. Other than that, he didn't show much. They hadn't seen the innate 5-element flags and the 5-element domain. Logically speaking, he couldn't defeat the 7 of them, but he used the uniqueness of his soul skills and his accurate judgment of the situation to achieve 200% of the effect. That was why he could easily defeat the 7 of them. A moment later, the effect of the Jade Qilin tsunami disappeared, and the hundreds of meters of waves fell back into the sea. The 7 of them floated down like leaves in a rainstorm. Their faces were extremely pale. It wasn't that they couldn't withstand the Jade Chilan tsunami, but they were all injured just now. A few of them had even lost their ability to fight. Under such circumstances, even the strongest sea dragon Douluo couldn't withstand it. Their outcome was naturally more tragic. After this battle, Wang Feng had a clear understanding of the strength and various abilities of the 7 Saint Pillars. In actual combat, he also had some understanding of his chaotic 8 sounds and the 2 new 100,000-year soul skills. Wang Feng could clearly feel that soul skills had to be used more often in order to have room for improvement. Especially the tremor sound, Wang Feng vaguely felt that he had some understanding. He also felt that his soul power was closer to rank 79. At this moment, 7 milky white rays of light suddenly fell from the sky and landed on the 7 Saint Pillars floating in the sea. A red figure floated down from the sky. It was Possessi. Under this light, the 7 Saint Pillars barely recovered a little. They walked ashore and looked at Possessi with ashamed expressions. The 7 Saint Pillars had joined forces, but they were overturned by the power of the sea in their own territory. If this were to spread, the entire Sea God's Island would probably laugh. Were these still the 7 Saint Pillars? It's just a battle. Possessi naturally saw through their thoughts and said indifferently, "This is nothing. In the future you will face many battles. No one is invincible, and no one is guaranteed to win. Even I don't think I'm invincible. I believe that if we were to fight again, this Wang Wu wouldn't dare to say that he could win." As the leader of the Sea God's Island, she naturally wouldn't blame the 7 Saint Pillars for this small battle. In addition, she had been watching all this while, so she knew that they couldn't be blamed for losing. At this moment, Wang Feng shook his head. "No, even if we were to fight again, I would definitely win." Possessi. 7 Saint Pillars. Possessi frowned and looked at Wang Wu. This person was still as arrogant as ever. End of chapter. Chapter 807. You don't have to console us, Head Consecrator. The Sea Dragon Douluo said, "A loss is a loss. It's not that we can't afford to lose. We just feel embarrassed. Furthermore, such a loss allows us to better understand ourselves. We will work even harder in the future. Hence, we have to thank Wang Wu." As he spoke, the Sea Dragon Douluo placed his hands on his chest and shoulders and bowed respectfully to Wang Feng. The other 6 people did the same. Seeing this, Possessi nodded in satisfaction. The 7 Holy Pillars were the most outstanding people chosen from Sea God's Island over the years. Whether it was in terms of talent, strength, or character, they were all the best. With such a mindset, they were worthy of being called the 7 Holy Pillars. If you have time in the future, I will ask you to thank me. Wang Feng waved his hand. Hearing this, the 7 people's expressions changed. What he meant was that he would look for them to fight in the future. The Sea Dragon Douluo hurriedly said, "There's no need for that. Once is enough." He really didn't want to fight with him. He was too strong. He didn't seem to have any flaws. The 7 of them were very clear that Wang Wu couldn't have unleashed his full strength just now. Their opponents had clearly seen through their tactics from the very beginning, and used only 3 or 4 soul skills to defeat all of them. Of course, his opponent's soul skill was too powerful, but it was fundamentally because his opponent was too smart. Now that the 7 Holy Pillars had unleashed their full strength, Wang Wu knew how strong they were. If they fought again, the Sea Dragon Douluo would be trampled. Unless the 7 of them had a major breakthrough. No one liked to be trampled. They didn't like it either. It was fine if it happened once or twice, but it would hurt their confidence. At this moment, Possessi suddenly said, "Next time, Wang Wu, let's spar. You can choose the location." Hearing this, Wang Feng frowned. Is he trying to stand up for the 7 Holy Pillars? Or is he trying to test my strength? Over the past 2 years, my strength has increased by a lot. When they first met, Possessi could still sense my strength. In the past 2 years, Even if Possessi had seen him grow stronger, he probably wouldn't know how strong he had become. The 7 Saint Pillars were also stunned. They hadn't expected the great Possessi to say something like this. How many years has it been? How many years has it been since I last saw the head consecrator in action? Even the man with the hammer and the birdman with 3 pairs of wings had not been able to defeat the great consecrator. That was also the only 2 times in all these years that the head consecrator had acted. Who would have thought that after so many years, he would be able to see the head consecrator in action again? The 7 Saint Pillars looked at by Saishi, their hearts filled with excitement and admiration. No matter what, the 7 Saint Pillars had lost, and the sea god's island would lose face. Possessi was the leader of the divine sea god's island, so he naturally had to avenge them. Wang Feng replied without batting an eyelid, "Then we'll talk about it when I'm free. I'll take my leave first." Wang Feng felt that Possessi's strength might not be as simple as he thought. Especially on the sea god's island, the deep-sea demon whale wouldn't enter the territory of the sea god's island. Other than fear of the sea god, it was more afraid of this great consecrator. After all, the sea god had long left this world. Wang Feng had always felt that Possessi's strength should be comparable to Bibidan's. On the sea god's island, Qian Lu definitely wouldn't be her opponent. Wang Feng said and left. Because he had told Possessi about the second test, Possessi would support his cultivation on the island. However, if it was a fight, Wang Feng calculated his strength and felt that if he used the Pangu axe, he would have a chance. However, it was a little stupid to use this trump card in a fight. However, since Possessi wanted to give him a wave of experience, Wang Feng naturally wouldn't refuse. Before leaving, Wang Feng glanced at Tang San and the others. "Great Consecrator, will there be a problem with this Wang Wu?" After Wang Feng left, the seahorse Douluo frowned and said, "Although we don't know anything about the situation on the continent, why would such a strong person choose to join the sea god's island?" Possessi looked at Wang Feng's back and remained silent. "Don't worry about this." Possessi shook his head. Suddenly, he looked at Tang San and the others and smiled. "Tang San, it seems like you guys were watching the fight just now. What did you guys learn?" The 9 of them were stunned. What the hell was there to comprehend? The biggest thing they learned was that Wang Wu was ridiculously strong. He knew the situation like the back of his hand, and his performance could be said to be perfect. Every step he took caused great damage to the 7 holy pillars. Not only were his soul skills powerful, but they were also very precise. If there is, then next, Tang San, Dai Mubai Zhu Zhuqing, Oscar, Ma Hongjun, Ning Rongrong, and Xiao Wu. The 7 of you will fight with me in the next test. Possessi smiled and said, "Use the enlightenment you guys gained today and get ready. I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of strength the 7 of you can unleash." Tang San and the others sucked in a breath of cold air. Their 6th test didn't have any other requirement. Possessi was the one who came up with the questions. They didn't have an easy time in the 5th test. Other than Tang San and Zhu Zhuqing, everyone else had been defeated by the 7 holy pillars countless times. Only then did they find a way to win after being defeated countless times. Thus, they defeated their opponents. It could be said that it was very difficult. Of course, they improved a lot. Because they used this method to pass, and because they were at a bottleneck, they obtained a 2nd soul ring. They all became soul Douluos above rank 81. This was something that the 7 of them didn't dare to imagine. It was only after this test that the 9 of them understood how much benefit they had gained from surviving Wang Wu's oppression in the 1st test. The 1st test was like a catalyst that accelerated their growth by countless times. Tang San even calculated that if they hadn't gone through Wang Wu's oppression and destruction, other than Tang San, the rest of them wouldn't have a rank 81 soul power. They didn't even know how much time they would have to spend. But at this moment, they never expected that Possessi would actually propose such a condition for the 6th test. Fight with her? How could they fight? Imagine that I'm Wang Wu and see how long you guys can last, Possessi said with a smile. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. They felt that this senior Possessi seemed to have a deeper meaning. He must have seen through their opposition to Wang Wu. Senior, you won't use your full strength, right? Tang San hesitated for a moment and said. If he used his full strength, there was no way they could fight. Of course. Possessi nodded slightly. You guys can choose the location. I'll only use the first 6 soul skills, and I won't borrow the power of the sea or the temple. As long as you can hold on for an incense stick's time, you'll pass the test. End of this chapter. Chapter 808. Hearing this, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. This request was still barely acceptable to him, but it seemed to be very difficult. Since that's the case, let's see Senior's strength in half a month's time. Tang San's eyes flashed with a strange light. Half a month later, Wang Feng stepped on his flying sword and came to the Sea God Mountain to watch the battle between Tang San's group of 7 and Possessi. If they could watch his battle, then Possessi would naturally not refuse to watch his battle. Wang Feng also wanted to see Possessi's strength. In the past half a month, Wang Feng practiced the tremor formula again and found that his progress was rapid. After all, the chaotic 8 sounds was related to the strength of one's spiritual power. If he snorted now, he would be able to stun for a longer time. However, he could still defend against it. In terms of realm, he should not have reached the small success stage yet. Creating a self-created technique was troublesome. Everything had to be done step by step. Even the specific cultivation level was vague. He could only rely on himself to judge. In addition, Wang Feng calculated the time. Hulayina should be returning to the continent soon. At most, she would return to the Martial Spirit Hall in half a month. Within 2 months, the Martial Spirit Hall would definitely send someone to the Sea God Island. But what could be done now had been done. This was the 6th test. Except for Ning Rongrong, Zhu Zhuqing, and Tang San, they had also passed the black test. Wang Feng had achieved his goal. In the remaining 2 months, Ning Rongrong and Zhu Zhuqing would also complete their final test. Tang San would be more troublesome. He might only be able to complete the 7th test. However, in less than 3 years, Wang Feng felt that he had reached his limit. At this moment, the Sea God Mountain trembled. The 7 of them had already begun to move. Wang Feng watched with rapt attention. Possessi had suppressed a lot of his strength in this mat. He could only use 6 soul skills. But even so, Possessi was many times stronger than any of the 7 Saint Pillars. At the beginning of the battle, Wang Feng could roughly see Tang San's tactic. Simply put, one word: tough. That's right, it was a head-on confrontation. Don't think it's impossible. One had to know that they were all Shrek's 7 monsters. Among them, Tang San, who was both the soul and the strongest, had 400,000-year soul rings. His 5th soul ring had evolved during his battle with Wu Zhao and the Sea Witch. The Sea Witch had told Tang San about this during her battle with Wang Feng. Tang San had also heard her demonic soul-suppressing song, but because he had the protection of the vast sea cosmic shroud and the light of the Sea God, he was also the successor of the Sea God. As a result, Tang San gained a lot of benefits from this song. His 5th soul ring had become a special 100,000-year soul ring. Regarding this, Wang Feng could only say that the main character was indeed the main character. A mistress was indeed a mistress. Tang San possessed 400,000-year soul rings and several 100,000-year soul bones. Coupled with various Tang sect consummate skills, his current strength was comparable to a transcendent Doulu. The second strongest was Zhu Zhuqing, who had 200,000-year soul rings. During Wu Zhao's 5th test, she was given another god-bestowed soul ring at rank 80 because she passed it the fastest. She had a second 100,000-year soul ring. However, there was still a big gap between her and Tang San's. As for the other 4, except for Xiao Wu, they were all soul Doulu. Ning Rongrong had even cultivated to the heart of 7 apertures. She could enhance any of the 7 people, and the enhancement effect was very terrifying. Although Shun Lingqi did not participate in the battle, the 7 of them, except for Xiao Wu, had drunk all kinds of white beer before they came. This was the advantage of being a food-type soul master. They could consume the beer in advance, and the effect would still be there. Good idea. Wang Feng looked at Sea God's mountain. He thought that Tang San and the others were going to drag it out. After all, 5 minutes was not long. It was only 10 minutes. It would be good if they could win. Possessi had such a big restriction. Once they passed, everyone's confidence would be greatly boosted. It did not matter if they could not win. After all, she was Possessi. It was better than dragging it out. After the battle began, the 7 of them tacitly launched wave after wave of attacks at Possessi. However, the 7 of them had a misunderstanding about Possessi's strength. Even Wang Feng had a misunderstanding about Possessi's strength. The first to attack was Zhu Zhuqing. The moment she got close to Possessi, she gently pressed on Zhu Zhuqing. In the next moment the void shook. Wang Feng saw Zhu Zhuqing's expression change drastically. The nimble Yue elf true body was instantly beaten back to its original form. She was like a kite with a broken string. She turned into a javelin and directly pierced into the sea. Boom! The entire ring-shaped sea seemed to shake because of Zhu Zhuqing's fall. Wang Feng was shocked. So strong? Wang Feng could not help but burst out. She has such power with just a gentle press? Possessi's strength, could it be? He suddenly thought of the raging waves' desperate situation. Those heavy silver pillars, could it be that Possessi could move them easily? Otherwise, the power of this palm was not inferior to his at all. Even if Zhu Zhuqing had 200,000-year soul rings, her defense was still not strong. She was caught off guard, and as the first probing attack, she instantly fell into the ring-shaped sea. The other 6 people were stunned on the spot. Then, Wang Feng saw Tang San immediately change his strategy. It seemed that he was not strong enough. Wang Feng did not expect Possessi's strength to be so strong. Shrek's 7 people had already become very strong. Even if Wang Feng had not read the original novel, he knew that this person was definitely much stronger than the original 7 monsters. But obviously, the difference in essence was still too big. Even without the help of the sea and the power of the temple, Possessi was not someone they could defeat. With Wang Feng's eyesight, he could even see that Zhu Zhuqing was directly hit and sunk more than 100 meters into the ring-shaped sea. Wang Feng looked at Possessi and frowned slightly. Very quickly, Tang San and the others were utterly defeated, just like how he had defeated the 7 Saint Pillars. Possessi did not even use a few soul skills. Wang Feng could only see Possessi's first 3 soul rings light up once. Everyone who was eating Oscar's mushroom sausage and planning to fly away had not yet flown out of the range of the Sea God Mountain when they saw Possessi standing in place and gently stomping his feet. Several icy blue lights directly emerged from Possessi's back with a sparkling and translucent luster, as if they were psychic and bound towards the 7 people. Swish, swish, swish. Ning Rongrong and Dai Mubai, who were slightly slower, were directly tied up. They were pulled back in an instant. Then, he pressed lightly. Bang bang! An explosive airflow sounded on the Sea God Mountain. The 2 of them were like bullets hit into the ring-shaped sea. Violent waves rose to a height of over 100 meters. The entire ring-shaped sea trembled again. End of this chapter. Chapter 809. Possessi's attacks were very relaxed. Wang Feng felt the same way too. Ning Rongrong was in trouble. Ning Rongrong's body couldn't compare to Dai Mubai's. Dai Mubai would only be shaken up, but he wouldn't be seriously injured. At most, he would lose his ability to fight. However, Ning Rongrong was in trouble. Possessi's abilities were restricted, but she was still very serious. She didn't intend to go easy on Wang Feng. Wang Feng's heart skipped a beat when he saw Ning Rongrong screaming as she fell into the sea. His mouth twitched. This girl is going to suffer for a while. She'll have to rest for a few days if she continues like this. Wang Feng sensed the sea and could sense Ning Rongrong's exact location. At this time, Zhu Zhuqing had already woken up from the sea. She swam towards Ning Rongrong and quickly pulled her to the surface. Wang Feng frowned when he saw Possessi on the sea god's mountain. This is too much. She's not holding back at all. However, Wang Feng could feel how strong Possessi was. Even though she was a woman, the strength of her body had likely reached a terrifying level. There was a reason why she could defeat Thousand Dalu and Tang Chen. Soon, the battle on the sea god's mountain was coming to an end. As the three of them fell into the sea, Ma Hongjun, Oscar, and Tang San broke out in cold sweat. Possessi's strength seemed to be unfathomable. Even though Tang San had activated his full strength and used all his soul bones, he still felt his scalp go numb. He suddenly understood how the 7 Saint Pillars felt when they were fighting Wang Wu behind the 5 Saint Pillars. Invulnerable, however, he couldn't lose just like that. "Fatty, Oscar, cover me!" Tang San shouted. "There's still half the time." After that, Tang San unleashed his blue-silver domain with all his might. The blue-silver Emperor True Body appeared in mid-air, and blue-silver light enveloped the entire sea god mountain. Countless plants began to grow rapidly under the effects of the blue-silver domain. Possessi looked at Tang San. He seemed to know what the other party was planning to do. Is Tang San trying to mobilize all the plants on the Sea God Mountain to attack the Sea God Palace? Besiege Wei to rescue Zhao? Naturally, Wang Feng could tell. However, they were more concerned about Zhu Zhuqing, who was on the surface of the sea. At this time, Zhu Zhuqing had already floated up with Ning Rongrong in her arms. However, Ning Rongrong had already fainted. Looking at the situation, her body seemed to be seriously injured. Even if she was cured, she would need to rest for at least a week. Zhu Zhuqing was barely fine. The place where Possessi had pressed down on was her lower abdomen. The clothes there were torn apart. When she fell into the sea, some of her clothes were torn, revealing a small area of her snow-white skin. However, her face was pale, and there was fear in her eyes. She was clearly in disbelief at that kind of strength. In comparison, Dai Mubai was in a worse state than Zhu Zhuqing. The clothes on his upper body were tattered, and there was a large bruise on his body. From this, it could be seen that Zhu Zhuqing, who had 200,000-year soul rings, had surpassed Dai Mubai, an assault-type soul master who was known for his strength. At this time, on the Sea God Mountain, Tang San's plan worked. Oscar's mirror intestine, which had replicated Ma Hongjuan's martial soul and soul skills, flew in midair with Ma Hongjun and blocked in front of Tang San. The Sea God Palace behind Possessi was quickly enveloped by the plants that grew wildly. Possessi snorted coldly. He waved the scepter in his hand, and his 5th soul ring lit up slightly. A water-colored ripple gently blossomed from his body. With him as the center, all the plants that came into contact with this water-colored ripple were instantly shattered into pieces. The emerald green that filled the sky were all shattered into pieces. But immediately after, this water-colored ripple absorbed countless plant powder that had been shattered into pieces. The originally light blue water-colored ripple quickly turned green. It continued to blast towards Tang San and the others in midair. At this moment, there was less than a minute left. Little San's reaction is still very fast. Wang Feng looked at this scene and nodded slightly. Tang San ate a golden fly intestine and slammed his foot towards the water-colored ripple. A black light blade that was as long as a book slashed towards the water-colored ripple like an axe. It was Tang San's 100,000-year leg bone soul skill, the evil demon tiger whale axe. It came from the evil demon tiger whale king's left leg bone soul skill. After the golden fly intestine increased it by 50%, it barely cut a small hole in the water-colored ripple. However, the water-colored ripple pushed over like a tide, and the huge force did not dissipate. Ma Hongjun and Oscar did not have time to react and were directly sent flying. Even their combined sixth soul skill, Phoenix Cloud-Piercing Strike, did not cut this water-colored ripple. Only Tang San barely managed to cut a small hole and was barely not blasted away. Ma Hongjun and Oscar were directly blasted out of Sea God Mountain and fell into the ring-shaped sea. Wang Feng took a look and saw that the incense stick had reached its end. Of the 7 of them, Xiao Wu was taken back by Tang San. The other 5 were all blasted out of Sea God Mountain and fell into the ring-shaped sea. Oscar and Ma Hongjun, who were blasted out by the water-colored ripple, were actually fine, but Zhu Zhuqing, Ning Rongrong, and Dai Mubai, who were gently blasted away by Possessi's palm, were not so good. Although Little San and the others have become much stronger, it's still very difficult for them to fight against Possessi, who has various restrictions. Wang Feng frowned and looked at Possessi. It was just that her attack was a little ruthless. This woman was not simple. It was impossible to become the great consecrator of Sea God Island without some means and strength. Regardless of their standpoint, Poseidon and the 1,000 Daos were essentially the same. Because to put it bluntly, both of them were subordinates who served the gods. After watching this battle, Wang Feng did not stay any longer. He did not say anything and left. At night. It hurts. In a residence in Haima City, Ning Rongrong was lying on the bed. She was wearing thin clothes, revealing the beautiful curves of her body. Zhu Zhuqing was applying medicine to Ning Rongrong's back and thighs. These medicine were all the spiritual herbs that Tang San had collected in the Icefire Yin-Yang well. They were all crushed into a paste and mixed together. Although Ning Rongrong's injuries were mostly healed, her external injuries were not. The terrifying impact made the skin on her back almost peel off when she fell into the sea. Ning Rongrong's current physical fitness was actually very strong. However, Possessi did not hold back. When she fell into the sea, the entire ring-shaped sea shook. One could imagine how strong the impact was. Dai Mubai and Zhu Zhuqing were still fine, but Ning Rongrong was miserable. The paste is made from the essence of several spiritual herbs. Third brother said that after applying it, your skin will recover to its original state in 5 days. Then, you will be able to walk. Zhu Zhuqing explained from the side. Senior Possessi is really too much. Why is he so harsh on juniors like us? Ning Rongrong did not move. Because if she moved, the skin on her back would crack. She only complained, Senior Possessi is really strong. Zhuqing, do you think that Wang Wu can defeat her? Zhu Zhuqing's slender hand, that was applying medicine to Ning Rongrong, stopped. She shook her head, hurriedly finished and left. Rongrong, have a good rest. Don't think too much. Rest quietly for a few days. With that, Zhu Zhuqing walked out of the room. Ning Rongrong pursed her lips, thought for a while, and then fell asleep. In the middle of the night, a breeze blew and a figure suddenly appeared in the room. P.S. There are 3 more chapters. End of chapter. Chapter 8:10. The moonlight outside the window shone on this figure, but it was as if it couldn't capture his figure, shrouding him with a layer of mystery. A cool breeze blew past, and the figure's shadow fell on the ground, slowly extending forward, and finally covered Ning Rongrong on the bed. Oh! Wang Feng, you big bastard, you actually didn't come find me. Ning Rongrong pouted, her eyes were tightly shut, and her eyelashes trembled, as if she was dreaming. The figure walked over, his entire body seemed to be wrapped in darkness, and no one could detect him. Only his eyes shone with a light that made the stars dim. He scanned the injuries on Ning Rongrong's back. Because she was covered in a light green medicinal paste, she looked like a clay beauty. Wang Feng. Suddenly, Ning Rongrong's tone was a little strange. Don't look at me now. The figure stiffened. Silly girl, what is she dreaming about? Wang Feng looked at Ning Rongrong speechlessly. Although she slept on her stomach because of the medicine, she didn't have many clothes on. She was dressed very lightly, and Wang Feng could clearly see that Ning Rongrong was indeed not smaller than Zhu Zhuqing. She was pressed on the bed and was flattened like a big pancake. This kind of injury wasn't very serious, but it easily affected the skin. Previously, when she was training in the New Lang Desperation realm, she was exposed to the sun, and it took a long time for her to recover her snow-white skin. Now that her back was directly split open, even if she used a healing-type soul skill, she wouldn't be able to recover completely in a short time. Unless she was a titled Doulu. Similar to the sea demoness, her soul power was astonishing. She had strong healing abilities, and she could use the power of the sea to recover. Otherwise, even if her injuries were healed, she would need a period of time to recuperate. I'm bathing now, hurry up and go away, I'll show you later. At this moment, Ning Rongrong's tone was soft, as if she was acting coquettishly. Wang Feng. Ning Rongrong continued to pout, but there was a shy smile on her face. She waved her hands as if she was sleepwalking. Wang Feng watched for a while. When he saw that Ning Rongrong was no longer moving, he decided to use his golden lotus to help this silly girl recover a little. When he saw this girl fall into the sea during the day, he still felt a little heartache. Unlike when he had ravaged them before, he had only been mentally and physically exhausted. He hadn't suffered any injuries at all. Wang Feng's hand spun slightly, and his soul power condensed into threads, quickly forming a golden lotus. It emitted a faint glow. When he came here, he had already concealed his aura. It was late at night. Tang San and the others were either meditating or had already fallen asleep. After all, the battle during the day was very tiring. Naturally, it was impossible for him to discover it. As he poured his soul force into the golden lotus, a pure golden light that resembled mercury landed on Ning Rongrong's back. In the next moment, Ning Rongrong seemed to have been provoked by something. She let out a soft cry as her face flushed red and her eyelashes trembled rapidly. Wang Feng, what do you want to do? Don't come over. You're a bad guy. We are not married yet, no. Wang Feng, could it be that this silly girl was having a dream? Wang Feng broke out in cold sweat. The effect of the golden lotus was actually not very obvious. Especially after his soul force changed, the golden lotus light gave people a kind of warmth. Ah! Ning Rongrong suddenly cried out softly, Wang Feng, don't touch there, it's dirty there. Wang Feng was speechless. He was angry and amused at the same time. This silly girl's mind was quite interesting. I told you not to touch my feet. Ning Rongrong muttered. Wang Feng resisted the urge to slap this silly girl and slowly used the golden lotus to recover Ning Rongrong's body. Zhu Zhuqing had the meteoric tear, so she didn't need it at all. However, Ning Rongrong's body couldn't keep up. In a battle between high-level soul masters, she would be severely injured if she wasn't careful. Just training wasn't enough. When a soul master's body reached its limit, it was very difficult to improve just by training. Wang Feng used the golden lotus to heal Ning Rongrong. He should be able to slowly change Ning Rongrong. The transformation of his soul force had greatly increased the golden lotus ability. If Wang Feng were to accelerate the ripening of those immortal herbs now, he should be able to do so in a short period of time. However, the first stalk of immortal herbs had obvious effect. The later ones were less effective. If Wang Feng were to develop for a few years, he should be able to create an army of soul beasts. However, the golden lotus light slowly enveloped Ning Rongrong. This silly girl's voice was becoming more and more unbearable. Wang Feng, you're so naughty. You actually touched my place. Is mine bigger or is Zhuqing bigger? Is mine bigger? You be gentler. I'm afraid of pain. Why are you pinching me? I already said I'm afraid of pain. Wang Feng. This silly girl was actually having a spring dream, and the male lead in her dream was himself. How much do you want to eat my body? Wang Feng looked at Ning Rongrong's blushing face. Her body was still trembling slightly, and her beautiful body would occasionally sway in a soul-stirring arc. Wang Feng knew that the golden lotus light was causing Ning Rongrong to be in an extremely comfortable state. Perhaps this was why Ning Rongrong was having a spring dream. After a while, Wang Feng saw that the medicinal paste on Ning Rongrong's back was slowly forming a scab. He planned to withdraw the golden lotus. After thinking for a while, slap. "Don't hit me!" Ning Rongrong suddenly frowned. She unconsciously covered her trembling butt in her dream. Wang Feng retracted his hand and nodded. Collect some interest. This silly girl actually dared to dream of him. She was at a disadvantage. After withdrawing the golden lotus, Ning Rongrong didn't seem to have changed much. However, the golden lotus power would slowly ferment in her body. If he didn't have time in the future, he would secretly modify her. Previously, he had been cultivating, but now all he had to do was to wait. Wang Feng turned around and was about to leave. A cold murmur, which sounded like a kitten's voice, suddenly rang out from behind him. "Are you planning to leave just like that?" Wang Feng's body stiffened. He knew who it was. He turned around and saw Zhu Zhuqing silently walk in from outside. Then, she gently locked the door. "This doesn't make sense," Wang Fengxin said. "Even possessee might not be able to detect him with skulls." Shadowmist. "How did Zhu Zhuqing sense him?" "I guessed that you would come tonight." Zhu Zhuqing seemed to know what Wang Feng was thinking. She said faintly, "I didn't sense you. I left for a while, but I didn't expect to hear about you two outside." Wang Feng. Just now, he had focused all his spiritual power on Ning Rongrong. She was dreaming. Wang Feng pointed at Ning Rongrong, who was blushing. It meant that it had nothing to do with him. Yes. Zhu Zhuqing glanced at Ning Rongrong. What a good dream. Wang Feng. End of chapter. Chapter 8-11. What's so good about it? What? You want my body too? Wang Feng found it funny. Our test is about to end. Zhu Zhuqing walked over without making a sound. You, Wang Feng thought for a moment and interrupted her. 2 months at most. I can tell you that the people from the Martial Spirit Palace will attack the Sea God's Island. Hearing this, Zhu Zhuqing was stunned. Wang Feng didn't tell her this the last time they talked. So, you're helping us so that we can complete the test in advance? Zhu Zhuqing seemed to understand something. Then you don't have to hide your identity from us. Why don't you? Do you have someone in the Martial Spirit Palace? Of course not. Wang Feng shook his head. The Martial Spirit Palace isn't that simple. I'm only hiding my identity to stop them. If I tell the 9 of you, it'll be easy to expose my identity. Bibidon sent me to stop you from obtaining the inheritance. I have to stop him. In fact, I suspect that there might be people from the Martial Spirit Palace on the Sea God's Island. Hearing this, Zhu Zhuqing was stunned again. Wang Feng did have this suspicion, but he didn't say it out loud. The possibility was low, but it wasn't impossible. The Martial Spirit Palace had suffered a great loss in the past. As the Pope, Bibidon wouldn't be as mediocre as the previous one. Wang Feng felt that if he were in Bibidong's shoes, he would have made preparations the moment he learned of the threat of the Sea God's Island. It wasn't impossible for the Martial Spirit Palace to send someone else to the Sea God's Island. Even the person he sent might not know Bibidon's true identity. No matter how strong the Martial Spirit Palace is, they can't defeat the Sea God's Island, right? Zhu Zhuqing took 2 steps closer to Wang Feng. Wang Feng shook his head. He didn't seem to notice Zhu Zhuqing's actions. The Pope's strength has reached a very high level. Even possessee might not be his match, Wang Fengxin sighed. Oh, Zhu Zhuqing suddenly approached Wang Feng and held his hand. Wang Feng, are you staying tonight? Wang Feng looked at her. What was going on? You're coming too? Why did he change the topic so abruptly? Zhu Zhuqing blushed and whispered, I have a little insomnia. As she spoke, Zhu Zhuqing looked at the single bed next to Ning Rongrong. It's fine. I can use the golden lotus to help me sleep, Wang Feng said. Zhu Zhuqing. Wang Feng retracted his hand and stroked Zhu Zhuqing's hair. Rest well. With that said, Wang Feng left the golden lotus once again. No need. Zhu Zhuqing said in a low voice. Then she turned around and walked to the bed. Save your energy. You still have to fight with Senior Possessee, Wang Feng smiled. Zhu Zhuqing was still a little angry. Naturally, Wang Feng would not stay behind. Moreover, he did not know when Rongrong would wake up, and it would be too troublesome to explain. A cool breeze blew past. Wang Feng disappeared. Zhu Zhuqing suddenly turned her head and looked at the empty room. Her heart was also empty. Only Ning Rongrong's embarrassing ravings could be heard in her ears. Half a month later, on the Sea God Mountain, Wang Feng quietly looked at Possessee in front of him. On the other side, the 7 holy pillars also stood quietly. Each of them looked like puppies waiting to be fed. If they wanted to truly see Senior Possessee's strength, now was the best opportunity. They had not seen him for many years. A few days ago, the battle between Tang San and Possessee was simply child's play. Possessee did not even use 1/10 of his strength. At the same time, Tang San and the others were also on the steps at the bottom of the Sea God Mountain. This place was protected by the light of the Sea God, so they would not be affected by the battle later. Naturally, they were looking forward to the battle between these two people. Rongrong, why do I feel like you've become prettier? Your skin looks better too. Didn't you get injured a few days ago? The battle had not started yet. The group waited. Bai Chenxiang suddenly touched Ning Rongrong's arm. You look good too. I've been thinking about Grandpa and the others these days. I'm so worried about the situation on the mainland. Don't you miss them too? Ning Rongrong had indeed become prettier these days. However, Tang San said that it might be the special effect of the medicinal paste. The raw materials of the paste were the spirit herbs picked from the Icefire Yin-Yang well. Really? I'm worried too. I miss them too. Ning Rongrong touched her face, as if she had thought of something, and her face couldn't help but blush. However, I might be a natural beauty, Bai Chenxiang. I think Rongrong is the one who's thinking about Captain, right? Ma Hongjun chuckled. Have you been dreaming recently? No wonder you look so good. Hearing this, everyone burst into laughter. Ma Hongjun was not the only one who guessed it. Oscar and Dai Mubai also guessed it. Because it was very simple. Damn fatty. What nonsense are you talking about? How could I dream about him? Ning Rongrong snorted and denied it. Let's not talk about it. They seem to be starting soon. With that, Ning Rongrong pointed at the Sea God Mountain. It had indeed started. Everyone's eyes focused. 2 powerful auras rose from the bodies of the 2 men. Almost immediately, Possessee released his martial soul, Sea God. 9 soul rings suddenly lit up from Possessee's body. Wang Feng did not hesitate and directly released the innate 5-element flags. He did not use the cauldron of heaven and earth and the divine light of heaven and earth because the other party's martial soul was Sea God. Wang Feng was not sure if the divine light of heaven and earth would work on Sea God. After all, Sea God as a martial soul was really unbelievable. Therefore, he planned to use the innate 5-element flags directly to end the battle quickly. This was also the first time everyone saw the complete form of the 5 flags. The 5 flags of different colors flowed with dazzling light in midair and appeared in 5 different directions. Sea God's domain. The scepter in Possessee's hand suddenly released a blue light that was as deep as the sea. This light was more lively and peaceful than the light of the blue-silver grass, as if it was the entire sea. The boundless blue light spread out in all directions through Possessee's vast soul power, bringing with it an unparalleled aura. Everything in the light seemed to be immersed in the sea. The Sea God's projection behind Possessee held a projection of a trident. At the same time, It also emitted a dark blue light that corresponded with the light of the domain. Sea God's domain. The sea god's domain could borrow the power of the sea and turn it into attack power. Therefore, Poseidon was invincible in the sea. The surrounding ring-shaped sea began to tremble. An invisible force seemed to merge with Possessi through the sea god's domain. In everyone's eyes, Possessi seemed to be in the sea. It gave people the illusion that he was unshakable. Domain. Wang Feng snorted. End of chapter. Chapter 8:12. The power of the 7 blood patterns was fully unleashed. With a light step, the entire sea god mountain seemed to tremble. His current strength was terrifying. Once it was boosted, it would reach an unimaginable level. The deep sea demon whale was the best proof. It was impossible for Possessi to use her domain to suppress him. An 800,000-year soul ring and 2 fused 500,000-year soul bones. This was a huge upgrade for Wang Feng. Only 100,000-year soul ring lit up on the 5-colored flag. It danced in the air, emitting rays of white light that dispersed all the blue light. Possessi frowned slightly. The power of the sea god's domain was decreasing again. And it was decreasing rapidly. The power of the sea was also decreasing. What domain is this? The sea dragon Douluo was shocked. It can actually break the great consecrator's sea god's domain? Even my magic annihilation domain can't break the sea god's domain. The sea dragon Douluo had a magic annihilation domain that could break the effect of the enemy's domain. But it was ineffective against the sea god's domain. Simply put, the sea god was much stronger than the sea god dragon. The two domains couldn't be compared. Wang Wu's domain could break the sea god's domain. This meant that the 5-colored flag was of a higher level than the sea god's? Stronger than the god's martial soul? In the end, Possessi's sea god's domain was suppressed to a range of 50 meters. Compared to when it covered the entire sea god mountain, the ring of sea around it was much smaller. Furthermore, Wang Wu's domain was a vast expanse of whiteness. Even their perception had disappeared. Possessi wasn't in a hurry. Her eyes focused, and her 7th soul ring lit up. This Wang Wu was indeed magical. Her domain couldn't suppress it. Even with her spiritual power, she couldn't sense that white world. What kind of domain was it? What did it do? It only gave Possessi a sense of extreme danger. Martial soul true body. Possessi didn't intend to go easy. Her domain was being suppressed. She didn't intend to attack first. Instead, she released the sea god's martial soul true body. In an instant, the martial soul true body seemed to solidify. But it wasn't a possession. Even if he had a martial spirit, the sea god would not possess him. The sea god, who was several meters tall, had white hair and a dignified face. Although he was only half illusory and half real, he gave off the feeling that he was truly looking at the sea. A powerful aura was instantly revealed. After the sea god's martial soul true body appeared, the sea god's domain expanded in all directions again. Then, Possessi moved. Starting from the first soul ring, they lit up one by one. All of his amplification soul skills were unleashed almost immediately. They were so quick that they seemed to have been unleashed instantaneously. The sea god's martial soul true body suddenly let out a furious roar, and with the trident in its hand, it attacked Wang Feng, who was inside the white domain. However, right at this moment, a beam of green light shot into the sky. The white world was instantly dyed a light green by this green light. The intense beam of light caused the sea god's gigantic body to tremble violently. Zhu Lai was actually intimidated by this green pillar of light. Possessi was stunned. The sea god's martial soul true body didn't fear any martial soul in this world. Even the clear sky hammer and the 6-winged angel couldn't make the sea god's martial soul fear them. In essence, the sea god's martial soul had already surpassed the top martial souls on this continent. How could there be a martial soul that could make the sea god's martial soul true body fear them? Possessi found it hard to believe. That green pillar of light exuded the aura of an 800,000-year soul ring. It was so powerful that everyone felt extremely suffocated at this moment. Although they couldn't see clearly what martial soul true body Wang Wu had used in that vast domain where green and white intersected, but at this moment they were extremely shocked. At this moment, the green pillar of light suddenly attacked Possessi. The sea god's martial soul true body let out a furious roar, and the half-illusory trident in its hand directly pierced towards the green pillar of light. This attack could easily pierce through a mountain that was hundreds of meters tall. However, when it came into contact with the green pillar of light, there was a violent tremor at the intersection. In the next moment, the sea god's martial soul true body was sent flying. Boom, boom, boom. Several black and white light cannons directly blasted towards the sea god's martial soul true body. When Possessi saw this, she quickly activated her fourth soul ring, causing the sea god's martial soul true body to have an additional layer of blue light wall around it. Dozens of two-colored light cannons were the attacks that came from the innate five-element flag's domain. When they bombarded that layer of blue light wall, a violent fluctuation instantly erupted. It was like a galaxy exploding, and the two-colored light spots filled the entire space. Every light spot that landed on the ground created a huge pit. It was obvious how powerful it was. However, Possessi's defense was not simple either. The sea god's martial soul true body was not hurt at all. "It seems like I need to enter your domain and see what kind of domain it is," Possessi said slowly. The sea god's domain around her had already been suppressed to a range of over 20 meters. After speaking, she stepped out gently and walked into the innate five-element domain. The moment she entered, the sea god's domain seemed to have completely lost its effect. This caused Possessi's heart to tremble slightly. This domain was indeed powerful. Back then on the 1001st step, Wang Wu had relied on this to pierce through the sea god's martial soul true body, right? At the same time, Possessi also saw Wang Wu in the center of the domain. In the next moment, Possessi felt a jolt in his mind. In this domain, his mind seemed to have sunk into a quagmire and suffered a violent impact. A faint sound suddenly came out from Wang Wu's mouth. Possessi's mind shook again and instantly fell into a state of unconsciousness. In the innate five-element domain, Wang Feng discovered that the power of the tremor word had been greatly enhanced. One had to know that this innate five-element domain itself had the effect of the five-headed star dragon's spiritual illusion, which would cause a violent mental impact to those who entered the domain. Even with Possessi's strength and vast mind, he still fell into a state of unconsciousness. It was obvious. Otherwise, just the tremor word alone wouldn't have had any effect on Possessi. Humph! In the next moment, Wang Feng gathered all the strength in his body on his fist and suddenly punched towards Possessi. The sea god's mountain trembled again, as if it had been shaken by a tremendous force. When Wang Feng's punch landed on Possessi's lower abdomen, swoosh! Possessi disappeared from the spot and was directly blasted out by Wang Feng's punch. Just like Zhu Zhuqing, he was blasted directly from the peak of the sea god mountain into the ring-shaped sea like an arrow leaving the bow. Rumble! The entire ring-shaped sea shook and sank like that day. In an instant, the Sioux people who saw this scene were all stunned. P.S. A new month, please vote for me. End of chapter. Chapter 8:13. Crash. Possessi smashed into the ring-shaped sea, and 100 meters of water splashed up. The ring-shaped sea's sinking caused the sea god's mountain to tremble. The scene in front of them made everyone's jaws drop. They were so shocked that they were completely dumbfounded. It was too familiar. Especially Tang San and the rest. Wasn't this scene the same as when they were smashed into the sea by Possessi yesterday? It was almost exactly the same. They didn't expect Possessi to also. How is this possible? The 7 Saint Pillars were even more dumbfounded. The 7 of them rubbed their eyes as they watched this scene. How could Lady Possessie be smashed into the sea by her opponent? The situation should be the complete opposite. There must be something wrong. The 7 of them rubbed their eyes frantically before opening them again. They wanted to see it again. However, when they opened their eyes again, they could only see a figure rising from the ring-shaped sea. It was Possessie. At this moment, Possessie's entire body was enveloped by a layer of faint light, as if she had absorbed some special energy. However, her expression was a little gloomy. After so many years, she was the first person to be smashed into the ring-shaped sea by someone else. Even the 2 people back then didn't do this, but they weren't that strong back then. She had been at rank 99 for many years. Although this attack didn't cause her to suffer any injuries, it still caused her to lose face. Possessie let out a soft roar. She seemed as gentle as water, but this roar gave people a feeling of boundless vastness. At the same time, the sea god's martial soul projection also let out a long roar, and its entire body erupted with an intense blue light. Possessie's 8th and 9th soul ring suddenly lit up. As these 2 soul rings lit up, the scepter in Possessie's hand continuously emitted an intense ball of light. 9 water pillars suddenly rose from the ring-shaped sea below, and quickly formed 9 huge water dragons that were even bigger than the sea god's dragon. Ong. These 9 water dragons were filled with spirituality, although they weren't real. Every one of them exuded the aura and ferocity of a 100,000-year soul beast. The sea god martial spirit's shadow leaped high into the air and landed on the head of one of the water dragons. Possessie was the same. He jumped onto the back of a water dragon and looked coldly at the ball of white light on the sea god mountain. In a battle, Possessie naturally wouldn't hold back. The other party's strength was not unexpected. His domain was indeed powerful. But so what? Possessie waved the scepter in his hand. The 9 dragons were led by the one under the feet of the sea god's martial spirit. They charged towards the green light pillar in the center of the green and white domain, which was where Wang Feng was. Rumble! The moment the 9 dragons were enveloped by the 5 direction domains, they were bombarded by several 2-colored light cannons. However, the 9 water dragons seemed to be full of intelligence, and they opened their mouths to spit out water pillars, which collided directly with the 2-colored light cannon. The sound of explosions filled the entire domain. Then, the 9 dragons attacked Wang Feng, who was in the middle. Wang Feng's eyes flickered. These 9 water dragons didn't have any divine attacks because they were pure water energy. Furthermore, they were very powerful. Wang Feng wasn't afraid. He was invincible in the innate 5 direction domains. Seeing the 9 water dragons coming at him, Wang Feng didn't even think about it. With a single punch, he directly blasted the water dragons apart. The intense explosion reverberated in Wang Feng's domain, but it didn't hurt him at all. The last 2 dragons were attacked by Possessie and the sea god martial spirit's shadow. Possessie could tell that Wang Wu wasn't hurt at all in this domain. Any form of damage would have no effect on him. This was because even if the water dragons exploded, the area of effect damage would be very large. Furthermore, when the 9 dragons were stacked together, the explosion would be even more powerful. Even if the opponent was blown apart, he would still be severely injured. Humph! Possessie squinted her eyes, and her body was covered by a layer of light blue light. Any spiritual attack from the innate 5 direction domains was blocked by this layer of light blue light. She wouldn't let herself be taken advantage of a second time. This layer of light blue light was her 6th soul skill, Sea God's Spirit Accumulation Barrier. It allowed her to be immune to any spiritual attacks for a certain period of time. It also had many defensive effects. At the same time, after the 9 water dragons exploded, the sea god martial spirit's shadow attacked Wang Feng immediately. As a martial soul true body, the sea god martial spirit was the most peculiar one Wang Feng had ever seen. This was because he couldn't tell if it was a beast martial spirit or a tool martial spirit. The development of martial spirits in the Douluo world was too simple. There weren't many people who were interested in researching martial spirit. This was why Wang Feng didn't know much about martial spirit. However, he didn't plan to win against Possessi this time. His goal was very simple. Seeing the sea god martial spirit's shadow approaching, the trident in Wang Feng's hand shone with a cold light. However, Wang Feng didn't dodge. He took the trident with his bare hands. The huge power made Wang Feng retreat quickly. Wang Feng snorted coldly, and with a thought, the Netharism flying sword had already formed within the domain out of nowhere. A backstab stabbed towards the back of the sea god martial spirit's shadow. Wang Feng grabbed the trident with both hands, causing the sea god martial spirit's shadow to be unable to move. The mysterious Ming flying sword carried a force as strong as a mountain and directly pressed down. At the crucial moment, a scepter blocked in front of the sea god martial spirit's shadow. Blocked. A crisp sound brought about a violent tremor, causing the entire domain to explode with a wave of energy. Seeing this, Wang Feng's torso bone suddenly erupted with an icy dazzling light that brushed towards the sea god martial spirit's shadow. The humongous sea god martial spirit's shadow was so close to Wang Feng that it couldn't be dodged. His body was quickly covered in ice by the spirit seal soul skill. Perhaps it wouldn't last for long, but it was enough, because Wang Feng was going to deal with Possessi. At the same time, a strange light flashed across Possessi's eyes. She directly sent the mysterious Ming flying sword flying with her scepter. Borrowing the momentum, she directly hit the sea god martial spirit's shadow with her scepter and directly shattered the ice that had just covered it. However, at this moment, one of the innate 5-element flags in the 5 directions of the domain suddenly shot out a blazing light at Possessi. As the light descended, it instantly corroded the aqua-blue light barrier on Possessi's body, causing her to be stunned. What soul skill is this? It can even negate such an invincible soul skill? What kind of joke is this? The moment the light barrier disappeared, Possessi's mind was violently impacted. Her expression changed slightly, and Possessi quickly retreated. However, it was already too late. Dragon Extreme Falcon Kill activate. Almost instantaneously, Wang Feng was in front of Possessi. Following that, 3 arcs of light slashed down. Possessi snorted coldly. Even though her mind was constantly being impacted, her spiritual power was still vast. Her opponent didn't have time to release that weird syllable in time. In addition, her spiritual power already had some resistance, so she wasn't unable to retaliate. Immediately, Possessi gently tapped her scepter on the ground, and the soul rings on her body lit up again. After that, she casually raised her hand, and there was a ball of aqua-blue light in her palm. After that, she directly waved it 3 times towards the 3 arcs of light. These 3 arcs of light, which were enough to kill a transcendent Douluo, instantly disappeared. Chapter 8:14. Possessi raised her hand and turned it into a cloud of smoke. The aqua-blue halo in her hand seemed to be able to break any kind of energy attack. However, at this moment, a fist came directly at Possessi. Her expression changed again. Boom. Pure energy couldn't be broken, not to mention that her opponent was right in front of her. At this moment, Possessi realized that Wang Wuli had teleported in front of her so that she could throw a quick punch. Possessi was blasted away again. She fell into the sea and created a several 100-meter wave. Everyone was dumbfounded again. A moment later, the ring-shaped sea started to boil. Countless currents started to condense from Possessi's position. A figure rushed out of the sea with a whoosh. At the same time, the sea god's projection left Wang Feng's domain. It merged with Possessi's body. In the next moment, an enormous aura rose from Possessi's body. It was an aura that no one could resist. The aqua-blue airflow was like burning flames that swirled around Possessi's body. Especially her eyes, which contained a pair of aqua-blue eyes that contained a hint of divinity. Wang Feng looked at her in surprise. Is this the aura of a god? So the sea god's true body could be possessed. Wang Feng vaguely sensed the unique aura emitted from Possessie's body. Although it was faint, it was indeed the aura of a god. God wasn't quite accurate. It was the aura of a demigod. He didn't expect such a big change to happen after being possessed by the sea god's true body. Earlier, he used the flame flag to break Possessie's light shield that was immune to spiritual attacks and sent her flying again. This must have angered Possessie. Whoosh! As if she had teleported, Possessie took a light step in midair. She seemed to be hundreds of meters away from Wang Feng, but she appeared in front of Wang Feng in an instant. The scepter in her hand seemed to have turned into a trident as well. White streams of air emanated from both sides of the trident. The trident seemed to tear the space apart. Poseidon looked like a goddess of war waiting to strike. She locked onto Wang Feng, and the trident seemed to carry the power of the sea as it fell towards Wang Feng. Wang Feng's expression changed. A sense of danger rose in his heart. In the next moment, he didn't have time to defend himself. The trident fell on him without him knowing. Boom! This time Wang Feng was sent flying. Although he wasn't injured, he felt an intense pain. This Poseidon is indeed not simple, Wang's expression. A strange light flashed in his eyes. There's still more than 10 seconds. The two of them seemed to have turned into two interweaving arcs of light. In a second, they intertwined countless times in the green and white domain. Boom, 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 boom. The sound was louder than the sound of thunder. The entire sea god's mountain seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. The ring-shaped sea around them was shaken by the terrifying sound. Huge waves that were hundreds of meters high surged. Countless sea spirit beasts sank into the sea. They didn't dare to surface to avoid being affected. The 7 holy pillars quickly left the sea god's mountain. Tang San and the others left the platform when the sea god's mountain began to tremble. They ate Oscar's mushroom sausage and flew to a distance to watch the battle. Even with their strength, it was difficult for them to clearly see what kind of battle was taking place in the vast green and white domain. Because it was too fast, they couldn't see it with their eyes or senses. Only Tang San, who had cultivated his purple demon eyes to the vast realm, could see a little more clearly. Among the 7 holy pillars, only the sea dragon Douluo and the sea demon Douluo could see a little more clearly. But they were all silent. In less than 10 seconds, the entire sea god's mountain seemed to have been plowed. Other than the sea god's palace in the center, there was no change. The various plants and forests on it were all in a terrible state. Even the walls around the sea god's palace were filled with holes. Lightning flashed in the sky from time to time. It seemed to be affected by the battle. The green pillar of light in the center of the domain was also getting weaker. Wang Wu is going to lose. Tang San whispered, Senior Possessie's aura is getting stronger. She doesn't seem to have used any energy in the sea. Everyone was silent. That was indeed the case. A few seconds later, a blue light screen burst out from the clouds. Following that, the green and white domain disappeared. The green pillar of light also disappeared in an instant. Wang Feng stood in the void with his body in tatters. There were many injuries on his body. On the other side, Poseidon's noble red robe had a few holes in it, revealing the skin underneath. The crown on her head, which symbolized the high priest, was also crooked. Her neatly combed hair was also messy. But she wasn't injured. Her expression was very calm. I lost. Wang Feng said casually, Senior Possessie's strength is indeed extraordinary. Theoretically speaking, under such circumstances, he had indeed lost. After 25 seconds of the innate 5 directions domain, all kinds of injuries started to appear on his body. Possessie's attacks were like waves in the sea. Each wave was higher than the previous one. There seemed to be no end to it. Especially in this sea, any of Wang Feng's attacks couldn't cause any substantial damage to Possessi. No matter how strong the force was, even if it was hundreds of thousands of kilograms, Possessi could neutralize it. Moreover, Wang Feng's punch wasn't that strong. It couldn't cause any damage to Possessi. She didn't seem to be invincible, but in this sea, she was invincible. Unless Wang Feng's attack was strong enough to shake the sea. The most interesting thing was that Wang Feng's Jade Qilin Tsunami Soul skill couldn't activate the power of this ring-shaped sea. It was very strange. The power of this sea seemed to be completely sealed. After Possessi fused with the sea god's martial soul true body, her aura underwent a subtle change. When the innate five directions domain was still around, Wang Feng could still fight Possessi to a draw. But after the domain disappeared, he couldn't. The original Sin's domain wasn't very effective against Possessi, who had such immense spiritual power. Wang Feng's soul power couldn't compare to Possessi's. After all, he was only rank 79. Hence, the more they fought, the more Wang Feng was at a disadvantage. With Possessi's current state, many of Wang Feng's control-type soul skills were very ineffective. Even if he could control them, he couldn't hurt Possessi. Wang Feng felt that only the soul-slaying spear had a chance of hurting Possessi. Furthermore, it had to be when the innate five directions domain was still around. Or, he should have a chance if he used the Pengu axe. As for defeating her, he had to reach rank 80 and obtain his 8th soul ring. Chapter 8:15. Thinking of this, Wang Feng couldn't help but think, how strong is Bibidon now? Furthermore, Wang Feng faintly felt that Possessi's strength was also somewhat hidden. This was because the Sea God's temple had never made any moves. Wang Feng didn't believe that there was nothing fishy about this temple. You didn't lose. Possessi stared at Wang Feng and said with a smile, "You're the third person who can force me to this step before reaching rank 80. Yes, the first two should be Thousand Dalu and Tangchen. This means that I can barely be compared to a rank 99 peerless Douluo now?" Wang Fengxin thought. This isn't good, I'm only rank 79. Am I invincible in the Douluo world when I reach rank 80? Wang Feng thought about it and felt that it was possible. However, Possessi's words were also very interesting. This step? In other words, Possessi should also have an ability that she didn't use. Wang Feng guessed that it should be related to the Sea God's temple. You said I didn't lose, so I didn't lose? Wang Feng snorted. I did lose, it's not like I don't dare to admit it. But next time, you might not be able to beat me. Wang Feng had benefited a lot from this battle. It was mainly because he experienced the strength that was infinitely close to that of a god. Yes, although Possessi had the aura of a god, she didn't have the strength of a god. She could only be said to be infinitely close to a god. Any attack by a soul master couldn't cause any damage to Possessi. This was just too bad. She didn't use invincible soul skills, but she was always invincible. This was the feeling of a god. Especially in this sea, Wang Feng felt that she was unshakable. Possessi doesn't even have the strength of a true god. If she's a true god, Wang Feng thought about it and felt that gods were still very strong. At least if they really appeared, he wouldn't even be able to escape. At this moment, Possessi replied with a faint smile, "Sorry. Even if it's the next time, I will definitely beat you." Wang Feng. Only then did Wang Feng remember that Possessi was also a woman. Women were all vengeful. No matter how gentle and kind Possessi was, she was only the great consecrated of the Sea God's island. Wang Feng went silent as he turned around and left on the Netherism flying sword to swiftly leave Divine Sea Mountain as he intended to find a place to cultivate. Possessi looked at Wang Feng's back view and muttered, "What an incredible person." Soon after, Poseidon landed on the ground again. At this time, the 7 holy pillars also rushed over from afar, staring at each other. Tang San and the rest also quickly flew up from the foot of the mountain. Consecrated, consecrated, the sea dragon Douluo took a step forward and gulped. He lost, but I didn't win either. Poseidon said something very mysterious, and everyone was confused. In fact, Bai Saishi could feel that Wang Wu still had some things that he hadn't taken out. After his tetes, he's teat. Wanged, Tang Tang, Island Tang Teat. Tang San, you guys stay behind. Possessi pointed at the sea god mountain that was in a mess. 7 Saint Pillars. The 7 of them still had a lot of questions, but since Possessi had spoken, they didn't dare to disobey. After so many years, this was the first time they saw someone who could fight with the great consecrated to such an extent. It was simply too shocking and curious. The 7 of them quickly cleaned up Sea God Mountain. Possessi looked at Tang San and the others. Perhaps because they had just witnessed such an extraordinary and shocking battle, the 9 of them were still a little excited and had yet to recover from their shock. Just like the attack between the 2 of them just now. Not to mention taking it head-on, the 9 of them would be shattered into pieces if they were even slightly touched by the aftershocks. Even Tang San was no exception, if not for the Sea God Mountain being suppressed by the Sea God Palace. There was also the Sea God's Light to stabilize the defense. In the battle just now, the entire Sea God Mountain would have been broken. A battle of this level could be said to be close to the peak of the Douluo world. It could be imagined how difficult it was to be able to see such a battle. Unfortunately, with their strength, they couldn't see much. Tang San, your next test is to pull out the Sea God's trident, right? Possessi didn't mention the battle just now. Hearing this, Tang San hurriedly nodded. His 7th test was to pull out the Sea God's trident. Come with me. Possessi glanced at everyone and led the way towards the Sea God Palace that still hadn't changed. The battle just now was so loud, but it still didn't affect this magnificent Sea God Palace. The 9 of them looked at each other and quickly followed. What does Senior Possessi mean? What does he mean by he lost, but I didn't win either? Ma Hongjun scratched his head. Could it be a draw? Definitely not. Because even if they didn't understand, they could feel that Wang Wu was suppressed from the collision of the 2 auras just now. It should be that neither side has revealed their strength. Tang San pondered. After all, it's just a spar, not a real life and death battle. There was a huge difference in the amount of strength they could display. However, I feel that Wang Wu's strength is a little exaggerated. Even if he was suppressed just now, this is the Sea God Mountain, Senior Possessi's home ground. Senior Possessi has a huge advantage here. And in the beginning, Senior Possessi, he was blasted into the ring-shaped sea. It could be said that Possessi was caught off guard. Everyone was shocked, and only then did they remember. The location of the battle was the Sea God Mountain. Possessi did indeed have a natural home ground advantage. But even so, Wang Wu was only suppressed and not defeated. This meant that if they left the Sea God's island, wouldn't Wang Wu be comparable to Possessi? At this time, everyone followed Possessi into the Sea God Palace. Inside the Sea God Palace, there were only statues on both sides of the main hall, forming a long corridor. Tang San recognized these statues at a glance. They were the statues of many sea spirit beasts in the sea. Among them was the great white demon shark. There were even statues of the mermaid clan, which instantly attracted everyone's attention. These statues are all the sea creatures that once followed Master Sea God. Possessi slowly explained, Do you know the size of the sea? Everyone was stunned. The size of the sea? Who knew? This was no longer a problem of Possessi. Countless dangerous areas in the 2 empires were surrounded by the sea. There were countless rivers and lakes on the continents that flowed to the sea. The vastness of the sea was unimaginable. The size of the sea is 4 times that of the continents, Possessi said as he walked. 4 times. Everyone was shocked. Although they already knew that the sea was vast, it was equivalent to the size of 4 continents. It was really exaggerated. Chapter 8:16. And on your continent for countless years, there have been all kinds of battles happening all the time. Possessi continued, you can imagine how many battles there are in the sea that has the area of 4 continents. A long time ago, the sea was far more dangerous than it is now. At that time, there were thousands of races fighting in the sea. Countless lives were lost every day. None of the soul masters on the continent dared to step into the sea. In the process of this battle, a great hero was finally born. He used 1,001 years to conquer one sea tribe after another with his powerful strength and peerless talent, unifying the sea. In the end, he was revered as the sea god by the Sea Clan and created an immortal legend. Hearing this, Tang San and the others were stunned. They looked at the countless statues in the hall and felt relaxed. This hero could only be the sea god. However, wasn't this 1,001 years a little too long? With such a long time, what kind of epic would it be? If Wang Feng was here, he would also be very surprised. 1,001 years? That was too long. In fact, it wasn't long. I heard from my teacher that a titled Douluo can live for 300 years, Tang San thought for a while. But it's not that they can't live for that long. Possessi turned around and smiled. Your teacher might not know this, but every increase in rank for a titled Douluo, other than the change in strength, also increases the lifespan of a titled Douluo. This is because one's lifespan can't be sensed. They can only sense it with their own life aura. Many titled Douluo don't talk about this. In fact, every time a titled Douluo advances by 1 rank, they can live for another 100 years. At rank 99, their lifespan is already more than 1,000 years. It's not impossible to live for such a long time. Hearing this, everyone was enlightened. The sea god really conquered the sea in just over 1,000 years. Possessi sighed. But the sea god's talent is not the strongest. 2 years ago, the most talented person I've ever seen was your great-grandfather, Tang Chen. For us titled Douluo, every increase in rank usually takes 100 years. However, your great-grandfather, Tang Chen, only used a few decades to cultivate to level 99. Upon hearing this, Tang San and the other 8 people could not understand. Senior, didn't you use a few decades to reach level 99? Dai Mubai couldn't help but ask. Furthermore, if every rank of titled Douluo is counted in 100 years, wouldn't the titled Douluo on the continent already be a few hundred years old? But they aren't that big. Everyone had the same question in their hearts. In fact, there were very few titled Douluo on the continent who were over 100 years old. Dugubo, whom Tang San knew, was only 80 years old. Possessi chuckled a few times and said, Child, that's calculated according to normal cultivation. But in reality, who would cultivate normally and endure 100 years of loneliness? Can you? Everyone shook their heads. When you were over level 60, you felt that your cultivation had slowed down, so you went out to sea to find an opportunity to cultivate and become stronger. As titled Douluo, with such powerful abilities, it's naturally impossible for them to cultivate foolishly. Possessi said softly, they will also look for all kinds of opportunities, such as comprehending through battles, using spirit medicine to break through, learning some secrets that are not passed on, and so on. No titled Douluo is simple. Titled Douluo's cultivation was extremely slow, so it was naturally impossible for them to cultivate foolishly and break through 1 rank in 100 years. It was too slow and unbearable. Hence, after listening to Possessi's explanation, everyone was enlightened. But even so, there are almost no soul masters on the continent who have cultivated to rank 97 and above. This is because no matter how many opportunities they seek, breaking through to rank 98 and rank 99 are 2 huge thresholds. Possessi said softly, As for me, it's because I'm indebted to God and received His grace that I'm able to reach rank 99. Otherwise, I wouldn't have such a high soul power rank now. Back then, I passed the top-notch 8th test, and became the high priest of Sea God's Island. 1000 Dalu is the same as me. It's a similar 8th test. Possessi led everyone to the front of the hall. It was a statue of the sea god. And it was open air. Above the statue there was a beam of bright light that shone down, making this statue look extremely sacred. Everyone also understood a little. And your great-grandfather, Possessi turned to look at Tang San, relied on himself to cultivate to rank 99. It's difficult for him to reach this level just by chance alone. This also requires unparalleled talent. In our era, it's not an exaggeration to say that your great-grandfather's talent is the best on the continent. Tang San was silent. His talent was inseparable from his ancestors' bloodline. But in your era, Possessi looked into the distance. In terms of talent, there might not be anyone who can compare to Wang Wu. His talent, even with my knowledge, is very unbelievable. You might have fought with him before, but you don't know him well enough. However, if he wants to cultivate to rank 99, he will need more than 1,000 years. Everyone was stunned when they heard this. You don't understand, right? Possessi smiled and said, although his strength is weaker than mine, his soul power is not even at rank 80. A soul master who is not even at rank 80 can fight with me, a rank 99 titled Doulu. This means that every level he increases is very huge, but it's also very difficult. For ordinary people, this kind of difficulty might only be able to increase more than 10 levels in their lifetime. It's also this kind of difficulty that creates his strength. His cultivation method is also very strange, and his various abilities are also unimaginable to me. His talent has even surpassed your great-grandfather, Tang Qin. If he's really your opponent, Tang San, you have no hope other than passing the 9 tests of the sea god. Possessi talked about Tang San in a roundabout way. He said all this to put pressure on Tang San. As long as you surpass rank 99, you can defeat him and the enemy you're about to face. Possessi looked at the sky with a deep gaze. Everyone did not understand the meaning of the last sentence. However, Zhu Zhuqing knew that this high priest seemed to have sensed something. Rank 99 is the limit of this world. Possessi gently tapped the ground with the scepter in his hand, and the crystal-like core at the top emitted a gentle light. Under the light, the sea god statue seemed to have been touched by something and quickly moved back. The 7 cylindrical statues beside the sea god statue seemed to symbolize the 7 holy pillars and also moved back quickly. A trident inserted in the core position was revealed in front of everyone. Because it was inserted upside down, only the appearance of a rod was revealed. However, the moment they saw this weapon, Tang San and the others felt as if the world had a little more center. If you want to surpass the limit of rank 99, you have to break the rules of this world. Possessi stared at the trident, but how difficult is it to break the limit of this world? Back then, the sea god used 1,001 years to conquer the sea and used the power of faith of countless sea tribes in the sea to break the limit and become the sea god. Chapter 8:17. That's right. How difficult was that? If Wang Feng was here, he would know that this was self-proving as a god. Furthermore, he had to rely on the faith of the countless sea clan in the ocean to prove himself as a god. It took more than 1,000 years. If Wang Feng wanted to create his own god's position, it would take an unknown amount of time, and he would not be able to find a way. There is another way to break the rules. That is to inherit the legacy left behind by an existing god. Possessi's expression was somewhat complicated. Lord Sea God knew that the chances of breaking the rules and becoming a god were extremely slim. Therefore, before he left this world, he left behind his god's legacy so that those with talent in the future would have a chance to become a god. When you become a god and settle the matters in this world, you will also leave behind your god's legacy. Just like that, it will continue to be passed down. Other than the sea god, there are also some places where God's legacies are left behind on your continent. 2 years ago, as a servant of the sea god, I suddenly sensed an extremely evil god's aura. At this moment, Possessi looked into the distance and his expression became serious. That is the aura of a god's position. On this continent, someone might have already inherited the legacy left behind by an extremely evil god. 2 years have passed and I can no longer sense that aura. However, I think that the other party might have stepped into the god's domain and blocked my senses. Hearing this, everyone was shocked. This. The group was so shocked that they could not speak. Countless cold sweat even seeped out of their back. A few months ago, I sensed the aura of a god's position. Possessi continued, if I am not wrong, this god's aura should be the aura of the angel god that the Thousand Tao sect serves. In other words, someone has also inherited the angel god's position, but it is not as strong as the evil aura from before. If we judge based on the god's test, the person who inherited the evil god's position has at least broken through the 8th god's test. He has stepped into the 9th god's domain. Moreover, the other party's strength might not be inferior to mine. Possessi spoke slightly faster. However, the latter might not be able to pass the 7th god's test. If his strength is much higher. Possessi's words. Everyone fell into a dead silence. Needless to say, the two deities' auras were probably from the martial spirit palace. Zhu Zhuqing also understood. No wonder Wang Feng was so serious. God! Tang San was shocked. If that was the case, then wouldn't the current situation of the continent be incomparably dangerous? So, the child, Possessi's eyes were kind as he looked at Tang San and the other 9 people. If you can't pass the last 3 tests, you won't have the slightest chance. As the person chosen by the sea god, you have the potential to pass the 9 tests, but this is far from enough. With less than a month left, you need to pull out Neptune's trident. Otherwise, at this point, Poseidon fell silent. Senior, why do we have to? Tang San suddenly thought of something, and his hair stood on end. Do you mean that they will come to the sea god's island? When the crowd heard this, they sucked in a breath of cold air. You are indeed smart, Possessi sighed. But I don't know. I just have a hunch. So, you need to pass the sea god's 9 tests as soon as possible. Senior, you should know who Wang Wu is, right? At this time, Tang San asked again. He is from the Martial Spirit Palace, and his disciple is also a member of the Martial Spirit Palace. Your premonition must be true. Because the girl has left the sea god's island and has even returned to the Martial Spirit Palace. I think the person who inherited the evil deity reported the information about the sea god's island. So, they will definitely come to the sea god's island. But you really don't know. Everyone had the same thought as Tang San. They knew that Hu Laina had failed the test. Possessi could sense the deity's aura. How could he not know Wang Wu's identity? If he knew, why would he let Wang Wu grow stronger safely in the sea god's island? However, Possessi smiled and said, Wang Wu is also the person chosen by the sea god. He is not as simple as you think. As for whether I know their identity or not, as the great consecrator of the sea god's island, I don't think I know. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. They vaguely understood something. Possessi didn't let Hu Laina go on purpose, did he? At the same time. So, Tang San and the others have become stronger? Martial Spirit City, Pontiff's Palace. Bibidon frowned as he looked at his disciple, who had changed so much after more than 2 years. After hearing the report, many of the titled Douluo present were a little stunned. Evidently, Hu Laina had told them everything that had happened in the past 2 years. From the moment he left Vast Sea City, to the Purple Pearl Island, to the Deep Sea Demon Whale, to the peerless powerhouse who shot out the beam of light, to the black rank trial on the Sea God's Island, and everything that had happened in each of the trials was incomparably clear. Could it be that this Tang San is really fated? The snake spear Douluo couldn't help but ask. Even Lord Popetiff's obstruction can't break their minds. Hearing this, everyone's expressions changed. The snake spear Douluo wasn't the only one. Even the other Douluo felt the same. That was the truth, destined? Bibidan's eyes were calm. There's no such thing as destined in this world. Without great perseverance, Tang San and the others wouldn't have achieved so much. Hulaina nodded. However, Popetiff has also helped us improve a lot. Hulaina pursed her lips and said, Evil Moon Yen and I are already over rank 80. We even obtained a God-given soul ring. Oh yes, I didn't see Wang Feng on the island. Maybe he didn't go to the Sea God's Island. Wang Feng was now the #1 enemy of the Pontiff's palace. He didn't go? Bibidan frowned and said, No, he went. He must have gone. He might have even gone earlier. That's why you didn't notice. I can only say that he's too good at disguising himself. But I've been to all 7 cities on the Sea God's Island. I didn't see Wang Feng. I've asked around. Hulaina thought for a moment before replying, Apart from us, no one else has come to the Sea God's Island to take the test. In the past 2 years, Hulaina had explored the entire Sea God's Island. She had visited all the places that she was supposed to visit. There's one place you definitely haven't been, Bibidan said. It's the Sea God's Palace on the Sea God's Mountain. He might have been on the island, but he didn't take the test. It's not recorded. There are many possibilities, but he's definitely on the Sea God's Island. Hulaina was stunned. She had never been there. At this moment, a cold voice sounded from outside the door. Why are you thinking so much? He didn't go to the Sea God's Island. Let's go there directly. Your Highness, it's time to move. P.S. All channels are limited today. Cough cough, that's why there's only 5 updates. It's only going to explode tomorrow. I'm still asking for monthly votes. Chapter 8:18. A cold voice resounded in the hall. 2 shadows extended from outside the door and landed on everyone. They were Thousand Dao Flo and Qianrenxue. Hulaina looked at the 2 of them, but her gaze immediately landed on Qianrenxue. There was no other reason. That dazzling light made it hard for people not to notice her. At this moment, Qianrenxue looked cold and solemn. His golden eyes flowed with holy and flawless cloud light, and his entire body seemed to be covered in a layer of golden light. He held a golden sword in his hand, which was spitting out blazing flames. The temperature in the hall rose rapidly as the golden flames burned. Hulaina could feel a wave of heat. What shocked Hulaina the most was the aura on Qianrenxue's body. This young master of the martial spirit hall, who had a special relationship with the Pope, seemed to have changed a lot in the past 2 years. On the other hand, Thousand Dao Flo, who was beside her, did not seem outstanding and was extremely quiet. Titled Douluo. Hulaina sensed it for a moment and was slightly surprised. Qianrenxue was already a titled Douluo. Many titled Douluo in the hall also felt the aura on Qianrenxue's body. Unparalleled aura. The martial spirit hall had another titled Douluo, and she did not seem to be an ordinary titled Douluo. Bibidan looked at Qianrenxue and smiled. Then, he looked at Thousand Dao Flo. Thousand Dao Flo nodded slightly, as if replying, It's time to set off. It's been almost 3 years. Bibidan stood up and turned around. He looked into the distance at the Pope's palace. His golden white robe seemed to be dyed with a layer of golden light that was even more dazzling. According to the original plan, we will leave 10 titled Douluo to guard Martial Spirit City and supervise the daily affairs of the Martial Spirit Alliance. Bibidan said slowly, the other cities will send at least 1 red bishop who is rank 60 and above to the port. Prepare the ships that the Martial Spirit Hall has purchased over the past 2 years. The Great Consecrator and I will lead them to Sea God's Island. We'll depart in a month's time and head to Sea God's Island. Remember to let all the red-robed bishops travel light and make arrangements for their respective martial spirit subhalls. And report to the headquarters. Many titled Douluo nodded before quickly leaving the hall to make preparations. With the current strength of the Martial Soul Alliance, this order alone was enough to gather at least 6,000 mid-tier and high-tier soul cultivators. There were at least 10 titled Douluo. This lineup could be considered to be superb. They could sweep away any power on the continent. If they really started a war, the two empires wouldn't be able to stop it. Moreover, Bibidon did not deploy the Pontifical Knights, also known as the Knights Templar. The members of the Temple Knights were all soul masters above rank 60. They guarded Martial Spirit City, the headquarters of the Martial Spirit Alliance. In addition, the Martial Soul Branch Hall also had a branch of the Martial Soul Branch Hall's Night Division, which was responsible for maintaining order in the world of Soul Masters. Of course, Bibidon would not turn out in full force. Currently, the Martial Soul Alliance was slowly nibbling away at the two empires. The remaining sects would take at most 2 years. They wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Even if they could hold on, it would take a lot of effort. When that time came, the Martial Soul Alliance would be able to conquer the entire continent effortlessly. At such a crucial time, Bibidon had to ensure the safety of its headquarters. In fact, in Hu Laina's opinion, this number of Soul Masters was more than twice that of Sea God's Island. More than 10 titled Douluo were not weaker than the 7 Holy Pillars. In addition, there was her teacher, the Great Consecrator and Qian Rinxue, who Hu Laina couldn't see through, and Popedif, who was inside Sea God's Island. Sea God's Island couldn't possibly protect Wang Feng and Tang San. Even if Sea God's Island wasn't destroyed, it would at least be greatly damaged. The second Consecrator, the Golden Alligator Douluo, was a rank 98 titled Dalu. He was second only to the 3 exceptional Douluo in the entire continent. Naturally, he was sent to oversee Martial Spirit City's headquarters. Even 2 rank 97 titled Douluo wouldn't be able to defeat him. Why do we have to wait for a month? After waiting for the titled Douluo to leave, Qian Rinxue said coldly, "We've prepared for so long before the Holy Lady returned. There's no need to wait at all. Every day we wait, the people from Sea God's Island will have a higher chance of discovering the Holy Lady's identity. Setting off now is the best choice. Otherwise, if the people from Sea God's Island find out, we'll be in even more trouble." Hearing this, Hu Laina nodded. Popedif was still on the island. If the people from Sea God's Island confirmed her identity, or if Tang San and the others found out that she had left, they would know that the Martial Spirit Palace would attack Sea God's Island. Possessi would then be informed. Sea God's Island would definitely be fully prepared. It was even very likely that Popedif, Evil Moon, and Yan's lives would be in danger. This was what Hu Laina was most worried about. Therefore, Hu Laina agreed that they should set off now. She couldn't wait to leave. Bibidon smiled but didn't say anything. Qian Dalu also laughed. If one were to say that he was anxious to prepare, Bibidong had already started preparing half a year ago. No one wanted to set off for Sea God's Island more than she did, but she couldn't show that she was in a hurry. Qian Rinxue didn't know why they were laughing. He just kept a cold face. A month's time is already very fast. The Martial Spirit Alliance today is not like the Martial Spirit Palace of the past. Even if we're prepared, we can't be too hasty. The two empires will notice that something is wrong. Other than that, Bibidon said slowly, compared to the original plan, we've already set off 3 months earlier. Moreover, at this point, Bibidong paused for a moment and fell silent. I don't know what you want to do, but the later we go, the more danger Popedif will be in on Sea God's Island. Qian Rinxue's tone was strange. Grandfather told me about the strength of the Sea God Douluo Possessi. Do you think Popedif Wang Wu can survive Possessi? If we're late, he'll be gone. Hearing this, Bibidon frowned slightly and looked at Qianrenshu. She was in such a hurry to go to see God's island. It seemed like Xiao Shui had feelings for Pope Diff Wang Wu. Thinking about it, Wang Wu had helped Xiao Shui escape from Heaven Do Imperial City. It was normal for them to have feelings for each other along the way. In addition, they separated right after they had feelings for each other. She had worked so hard for the past 2 years, and with the help of him and Qianrenshu, she had already passed the 8th test. She was naturally more anxious to go to see God's island. Thinking of this, he looked at Qianrenshu, who had a cold expression and a strange tone. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Nothing will happen to him. Bibidon's calm voice echoed in the hall. Don't worry. Other than me, no one can hurt him. Qianrenshu was silent. She knew that Bibidon had already made sufficient preparations half a year ago. End of chapter. Chapter 8:19. See God's Island, Furious Waves. Wang Feng was still sitting cross-legged on the heavy silver pillar. This place was the most suitable place for cultivation. Every day, he could hear the majestic and shocking sounds of the waves crashing. It also allowed Wang Feng to have a better understanding of the word tremor. It had been more than a month since the battle with Possessi. Wang Feng had stabilized at level 79 and was climbing towards level 80. However, it was probably impossible to reach level 80 in a short time. It was too difficult. Really, this level was fatal. With Wang Feng's own cultivation speed, it would take him 4 to 5 months no matter how fast he was. However, he probably didn't have that much time now. By the way, I wonder if there are any heavenly treasures on this sea god's island. Wang Fengxin's heart skipped a beat. Using the cauldron of heaven and earth, Wang Feng could refine all kinds of heavenly treasures into the purest soul crystals. Through the soul crystals, Wang Feng was confident that he could reach level 80 in a short time. Logically speaking, a place like the sea god's island should have heavenly treasures. At the very least, there should be some in the sea. Thinking of this, Wang Feng planned to discuss with Possessi to see if there were any heavenly treasures. If he could reach level 80, then the 8th form of the Chaos Green Lotus would give Wang Feng more confidence in facing Bibidon. Thinking of this, Wang Feng walked towards the Sea God's Mountain. However, as soon as he arrived at the Sea God's Mountain, Wang Feng found that Tang San and the others were standing outside the Sea God's Palace. However, Tang San didn't know. Wang Fengxin's heart skipped a beat. He didn't enter the Sea God's Palace immediately. At this moment, a golden pillar of light suddenly rose from the Sea God's Palace. The pillar of light rushed out of the Sea God's Palace and then quickly changed like clouds and mist, forming a golden figure. Wang Feng looked up at this figure. It looked like the Sea God. However, Wang Feng was quite familiar with the Sea God. It shouldn't be the Sea God. The next moment, the entire Sea God's island seemed to tremble. Wang Feng could vaguely sense a strange power surging toward the center from all directions. It was visible to the naked eye. Countless specks of golden light surged towards the Sea God's island from all directions, and even further away. These golden specks of light hovered in the air, looking like a river of stars, extremely dazzling. The golden figure in the center was in the middle of the galaxy, and the golden light gathered at the center of the figure. Subsequently, the golden figure gradually became clearer. Wang Feng narrowed his eyes. The first thing that appeared was the divine and heroic armor. Then, the person inside slowly appeared. It was Tang San. These golden specks of light seemed to be of very special energy. Wang Feng's palm gently sucked these golden specks of light into his body, but he found that he could not convert them into soul power. What kind of energy is this? Wang Feng looked at the pure golden light in his palm. It was a very special energy. It was pure and flawless, as if it contained a will. Is it the power of faith? Wang Feng pondered for a few seconds and watched the golden energy in the sky gradually merge into the golden figure, making Tang San's appearance a little clearer. It was energy that could not be absorbed. Only the power of faith could do that. This was because this was a power that originated from the condensation of one's soul and spirit. It belonged to the person who was worshipped, the sea god. It seems that after pulling out the sea god's trident, he has truly stepped into the realm of God. But Little Three's soul power level is still too low. Wang Feng shook his head. If becoming a god relied on the power of faith, it was really not easy to become a god. Perhaps this was the rule of becoming a god in the Douluo world. But thinking about it, there were many gods. It was impossible for all of them to become a god by relying on the power of faith, right? In any case, looking at the thousands of light specks of faith flying into the golden figure, Wang Feng was still a little curious. Obviously, this would only happen if one pulled out the sea god's trident, passed the seventh test, and truly became the successor of the sea god. At this time, the power of faith gathered on Tang San. At this time, Wang Feng estimated that if he wanted to kill Tang San, he would have to bear the karma of countless creatures in the sea. Tsk. Except for gods, even a titled Douluo would find it difficult to bear this kind of karma. Inheriting a deity's position would allow one to obtain the power of faith. This method of becoming a god was, in comparison, much simpler. After a while, as the golden figure became more and more solid, the light specks began to decrease. Then the figure disappeared, and everything returned to calm. After waiting for a while, Wang Feng was surprised to see Possessi come out with Tang San, who was holding the sea god's trident. However, Tang San looked extremely weak. His whole body was covered with blood scabs, and Xiao Wu was supporting him by the side. Seeing Tang San come out, the rest of the people went up to greet him. Wang Feng also saw the sea god's trident. Legend had it that it weighed more than 100,000 kilograms. But Wang Feng felt that it should not be that simple. This thing was a divine artifact. Without the approval of the sea god, even if one could move something more than 100,000 kilograms, it was impossible to pick up the sea god's trident. In the center of the sea god's trident, Wang Feng saw a triangular core that was still shining. This core should be the sea god's heart, which was the vast sea universe cover. Only those who were recognized by the sea god could use it. It was also a special divine artifact. Without this object, Wang Feng estimated that Tang San would not be able to pull it out if it flew into the groove of the sea god's trident. Looking at the sea god's trident, Wang Fengxin moved in his heart. He did not know if he could wield it. He felt that it was not possible. The weight was only one thing. He was not the heir of the sea god, and had not been recognized by the sea god's trident. It should be difficult for him to wield it. It was like the hammer of Thor in the Marvel comic. Only Thor could wield it with a divine spell cast on it. A group of people gathered in front of Tang San and seemed to be asking about the situation just now. Wang Feng thought for a moment and walked over. This thing weighs 108,000 kilograms. It may not be heavy compared to those heavy silver pillars, but even I can't lift it easily. Possessi looked at the trident with a hint of relief in his eyes. The divine artifact had a spirit. It had chosen Tang San as its master, which meant that the sea would soon have a master. 108,000 kilograms. Tang San was shocked. I feel that it's only about 100 kilograms now. It's not heavy. How can it be? Let me try. Dai Mubai was the strongest. He walked over and gently held the sea god's trident. In the next moment, he felt a repulsive force coming from it. Dai Mubai's martial soul was fully activated. Several soul rings lit up. His face was flushed and countless veins appeared on his neck. The skin on his hands holding the trident was about to peel off, but the sea god's trident did not move at all. Boss Dai, don't waste your energy. Senior Possessi can't lift it easily. It's useless even if there are 10 of you. Oscar smiled and said, this is a divine artifact. He also wants to save face. How can he let you lift it so easily? End of chapter. Chapter 820. Dai Mubai retracted his hand and rubbed it. It's so scary. In the hands of Xiao San, it's only 100 kilograms, but when he swings it out, it's more than 100,000 kilograms. Even a titled Douluo can't withstand it. Tang San held the divine weapon in his hand and felt a strange feeling in his heart. Smiling, Tang San really wanted to say something, but he saw Wang Wu walk over. Is this thing really 108,000 kilograms? The other party's voice was still so calm. You want to try? Possessy chuckled. Wang Wu, you can wield the heavy silver pillar, but it's impossible for you to wield this thing. She passed the top-notch 8th exam, and she was the high priestess of the Sea God Island. She had part of the Sea God's power, so she could barely wield the Sea God's trident. Although Wang Wu was also chosen by the Sea God, he hadn't passed the exam yet. He wasn't recognized by the Sea God, so it was naturally impossible for him to wield this thing. Dai Mubai passed the 6th black exam. Although he was recognized by the Sea God, his power was still not enough. I have this idea. Wang Feng's eyes flashed. Seeing this, Tang San thought for a while and gently stabbed the Sea God's trident into the ground. The ground seemed to tremble. Wang Feng walked over and looked at the blue-gold trident. The divine weapon of this world might not be inferior to the god-slaying spear in its martial soul form. It also carried the faith of countless sea creatures. Wang Feng took a deep breath and looked at this divine weapon. Back in the Rakshasa secret realm, the Rakshasa demon scythe should be extremely heavy. In order to pull out the Rakshasa demon scythe, one had to withstand the evil aura contained in it, which led to the special situation of the Bibidon at that time. The next moment, when Wang Feng's hands held the Sea God's trident, the Sea God mountains suddenly trembled. A majestic aura condensed from Wang Feng's body and rushed out, forming a swirling airflow. The strong wind formed by the airflow blew around. A dark light flashed in Wang Feng's eyes. He felt that this trident was filled with a huge resistance. This resistance made it difficult for Wang Feng to pick it up. It was the power of faith of the many living beings in the sea, and it also contained a portion of the power of the gods. Not to mention that he could wield a heavy silver pillar that weighed 500,000 kilograms. Even if he could wield 1,000,000 kilograms, it would still be useless. But, you really can't lift it? Wang Feng murmured. If they couldn't, it meant that humans would never be able to defeat God. In the future, he would be a man who would have to fight a god at level 90. How could he not pick it up? You can't do it anymore? Ma Hongjun and the others were also amused. Wang Wu's identity aside, although Senior Possessy said that he was not simple. However, in their hearts, they still considered the other party as an enemy. Adding on the fact that the Martial Spirit Palace was plotting against the Sea God's Island, their attitude naturally wouldn't change. Even Senior Possessy could barely pick it up. It seems like he hasn't passed the Sea God's test yet, right? Dai Mubai shook his head. What is his second test? To think that he still hasn't passed. They didn't know about this either. Wang Wu only took a few months to pass the first 3 tests. However, it had been more than a year, and he still hadn't passed the second test. This was a bit unscientific. Tang San watched with a smile. At first, he didn't understand how heavy this thing was. Even Senior Possessy could barely lift it. After listening to the explanation, Tang San finally understood what kind of power was contained in the Sea God's trident. Therefore, he wasn't worried that Wang Wu would be able to lift the Sea God's trident. The group of people laughed, looking like they were watching a show. Their faces were full of smiles. Only Zhu Zhuqing had a trace of anticipation in her eyes. At this moment, as the power in Wang Feng's hands became stronger and stronger, the airflow around his body seemed to form a hurricane, looking a bit violent. Looking at this scene, Possessy still had a smile on his face. If Wang Wu passed the second test, then he should be able to pick it up. After all, He had passed the second test of the sea god, and received the approval of the sea god. But now it was far from possible. Wang Wu, I think you'd better not waste your energy. Ning Rongrong pouted and said, This is a divine weapon. How can a mere soul master like you be able to pick it up? Senior Possessy said that you are the most talented man in this era, but I don't believe it. If Wang Feng is here, his talent is the strongest. Hey, why are you still using your energy? What a stubborn and proud man. If you can pick up this sea god's trident, I, Ning Rongrong, will take your surname from now on, okay? With that, Ning Rongrong put her hands on her waist and looked at Wang Wu with a smile. Everyone. However, the next moment, everyone didn't feel it, only Wang Feng felt a pure energy flowing out of his heart. Wang Feng was startled. It was the energy of the meteoric tear. The energy of the meteoric tear actually surged out at this time? What surprised Wang Feng even more was that, after this energy flowed out, the irresistible force inside the sea god's trident actually loosened a little. It was very small, only a few centimeters. But it was enough. Rumble. It was as if the entire sea god mountain was trembling, and then everyone saw an extremely incredible scene. The sea god's trident that Tang San inserted horizontally into the ground seemed to have loosened, and it was actually pulled out a little. It was about a distance of less than 10 centimeters. When the energy of the meteoric tear flowed back, Wang Feng also stopped pulling it out. Silence. Strange. Silence. Shock. The 10 people, including Possessy, opened their mouths slightly, as if they were dumbfounded by this scene. Although it was only less than 10 centimeters long, it was indeed lifted. This was too incredible. The 10 people were a little confused. How is this possible? Possessy murmured. Impossible. The sea god's trident condenses the faith of countless creatures in the sea. Without the approval of the sea god, even a level 99 titled Douluo can't bear it, unless he is a god. But Wang Wu was not a god. Possessy couldn't explain what was happening in front of her. Even she was like this. Tang San and the others were even more stunned. The most stunned was Ning Rongrong. The smile on her face was completely frozen on the spot. Is it an illusion? Ma Hongjun rubbed his eyes. Didn't they say that only with the approval of the sea god can one pick it up? Although his words were what most people were thinking, no one could answer him. Rongrong, do you really want your surname to be Wang? Bai Chenxiang pulled Ning Rongrong's sleeve. Ning Rongrong. Ning Rongrong suddenly giggled. So what if I pick it up? What's wrong with my surname being Wang? In the future, when I marry Wang Feng, there's no problem with me taking his surname. In the past, there were women who followed their husbands' surnames. Can't there be a cultural renaissance? Everyone. This little elf. Wang Feng glanced at Ning Rongrong. How could he not know what this silly girl was thinking? It was just that the energy that flowed out of the heart just now was a little strange, like the energy of the meteoric tear. But it was also a little different. End of chapter. Chapter 8:21. It could actually weaken the resistance of the sea god's trident. Wang Feng knew that the resistance came from the faith of the many lives in the sea. Even with his current strength, it was impossible for him to move it even if he was in his best state. Unless he reached rank 90 and his strength increased by another level, he would be able to lift the sea god's trident with the help of the chaotic green lotus martial soul true body. But it was really impossible now. Wang Feng was a little surprised when he picked up 10 centimeters just now. As expected, the meteoric tear would have different effects depending on the strength of the user. I have something to talk to you about. After letting go of the sea god's trident, Wang Feng walked towards Possessy. Possessy was slightly stunned. He nodded at Tang San and the others. Tang San and the others didn't stay and left directly. What's the matter? Possessy asked. Wang Feng asked if there were any heaven and earth treasures or various spiritual herbs on the sea god's island. You want to use those spiritual herbs to improve your cultivation? Possessi was a little surprised. There are many on the spiritual herb island, but most of them are harmful to soul masters. If you want to use them, it will cause great danger to yourself. I have a few here, but if you use these heaven and earth treasures, even if your soul power will increase in a short time, it will damage your foundation and destroy your future limit. I don't recommend you to use these. That was the reason. In addition to countless lives in the sea, there must be all kinds of rare treasures. Sure enough, there were still some. It's okay. Wang Feng shook his head and said, just give them to me. As an exchange, you can say whatever you want. Hearing this, Possessi thought for a while and said, okay. As a condition, do you still remember that demon soul great white shark? Although I don't know how you trained those 3 soul beasts to become 100,000-year soul beasts, there are 2 or 3 80,000-year soul beasts in the demon soul great white shark group. If you can. What he meant was, you have to train these 3 demon soul great white sharks to become 100,000-year soul beasts for me. Wang Feng was stunned and immediately laughed. Oh, are you treating me as a soul beast trainer? One by one. No problem, let them come to the furious waves' desolate territory. Wang Feng felt that this request was worth it. It could also be considered an equivalent exchange. After all, it was not difficult for Wang Feng to train 2 or 3 great white demon soul sharks of 80 to 90,000 years to 100,000 years. If it was the kind that was 40 to 50,000 years old, it might take a longer period of time. However, this kind of 80 to 90,000 years old, which was only a step away from 100,000 years, was very easy and fast. Then, Poseidon took out an immortal herb that looked like an icy blue coral from the sea god palace. Deep sea dragon Yingshan. Possessi carefully enveloped the palm-sized immortal herb with his soul power. It looked like a coral, but it looked like a baby dragon. It only grew at a depth of 6,000 meters. It was an immortal herb that had lived in the depths of the ring-shaped sea for tens of thousands of years. This thing contains an extremely strong dragon-type poison. Legend has it that this thing was once the descendant of a giant dragon that had a cultivation base of hundreds of thousands of years. However, it was abandoned after it was born because of its deformed appearance. It fell to the bottom of the sea, and was crushed into powder and blood by the pressure of the sea. This blood and powder nourished an ordinary coral, and it slowly formed into this appearance. Possessi shook his head and said, it contains an extremely evil aura of resentment. If an ordinary soul master were to consume it, they would lose their mind and become an idiot. At the same time, it also contains an extremely strong poison. Even poison-type soul masters who are immune to poison can't resist its toxicity. However, this Long Yingshan contains a rich amount of dragon essence energy. Soul masters can absorb it to improve their physical quality and soul power. His explanation was very detailed. Wang Feng looked at the palm-sized deep-sea dragon Yingshan. He could vaguely hear a sad cry. If it were to cultivate for another 10,000 years, it would probably become a spirit, right? Wang Fengxin thought to himself. After thinking about it, Wang Feng was rather interested in Possessi's story. What kind of soul beast was that giant dragon with a cultivation base of hundreds of thousands of years? Possessi was stunned, but he still answered, it was an extremely evil soul beast, the dark Nirvana demon dragon. However, these are all legends. Even the sea god has never seen it. I only heard that this dark Nirvana demon dragon appeared in the great star Do forest on your continent. This dragon is extremely lascivious, and it planted many soul beasts. The legend of this Long Yingshan originated from this. Wang Feng nodded slightly and accepted this Long Yingshan. Although this Long Yingshan had many stories, it was still slightly inferior to the immortal herbs in the ice and fire yin-yang eyes or the heaven and earth treasures in the Four Absolutes myriad Elephant Valley. The main reason was that there were too many negative effects. Even with Possessi's cultivation base, he had to carefully wrap it with his soul power. This was because even if the smell of this long ing shan leaked out, it would cause uncontrollable damage. Seeing Wang Wu leave just like that, Possessi opened his mouth and wanted to stop him. However, after thinking about it, he gave up. Since the other party was so confident, he must have a way to consume it. Besides, this trade wasn't considered a loss. A chicken rib-like immortal herb in exchange for 200,000 to 300,000 year soul beasts. It was a huge profit. After Wang Feng returned to the Furious Wave's desperate situation, he quickly used the cauldron of heaven and earth to refine it into sparkling and translucent soul crystals. A total of 3 soul crystals were refined. Wang Feng estimated that after absorbing these 3 soul crystals, he should be able to reach rank 80 in half a month. However, because it had become a soul crystal, the positive and negative effects of the Long Ing Shan had all disappeared. It had only become the purest soul crystal. It was already extremely fast to be able to increase 1 level in half a month. Otherwise, if he just cultivated like this, it would take at least half a year before he could break through. Unfortunately, this kind of immortal herb was analyzed very little. However, the soul crystal was made up of the purest energy. Absorbing it wouldn't have any negative effects on one's cultivation. On the contrary, it would have a positive effect. Because the energy was too pure, it was extremely helpful for the improvement of the quality of one's soul power. During the days when Wang Feng was absorbing the soul crystals, huge ships shuttled through the clouds and mist, heading towards the Sea God's Island at a rapid speed. From the looks of it, these ships looked like merchant ships more than 10 days later. At the port of the Sea God's Island, Tang San and the others were about to leave the Sea God's Island and return to the mainland. Although they couldn't leave the Sea God's Island after passing the test, Tang San, as the successor of the Sea God, was naturally not restricted by this rule. He could come and go as he pleased. The reason Tang San came here was because he wanted to summon Whitey and let the great white devil soul shark take them away. Originally, they wanted to stay because Possessi said that the person who had inherited the evil god, which was the martial spirit palace, was very likely to attack the Sea God's Island. In this regard, Tang San, as the successor of the Sea God, naturally couldn't sit back and do nothing. He planned to stay and fight against the martial spirit palace together. However, Possessi asked Tang San to leave the Sea God's Island in advance because the mainland might be more dangerous at this time. Besides, the Sea God's Island was not afraid of the martial spirit palace at all. After all, the Sea God's Island had been attacked before. So what? Wasn't it still beaten back? End of this chapter. Chapter 8:22. And it was a crushing defeat. On this Sea God's Island, no one could defeat Possessi. Even the person who inherited the evil god might not be able to do so. There were also the 7 Saint Pillars and more than 3,000 Sea Soul Masters. After weighing the pros and cons, Tang San and the others decided to return to the mainland to see how the situation was. Woo woo woo. Tang San took out a conch and blew it. This was given to him by Little White. Little White said that as long as he blew it, Little White would come. However, after blowing it for a while, he did not see Little White. Seeing this, the 9 of them looked at each other and had a bad premonition. At the same time, look! Ning Rongrong suddenly pointed to the front. Why are there so many large merchant ships? I remember that the communication between the Sea God's Island and the outside world are all small ships used for simple material exchanges. Zhu Qing, go to the Sea God's Mountain and report to Senior Possessi. Immediately, Tang San shouted, Chen Xiang, go to the 7 Saint Pillars and tell them, the people from the Martial Spirit Palace are here. As soon as he finished speaking, the sea in front of them was overturned and a loud bang was heard. Countless sea soul beasts were suddenly overturned. With Tang San's eyesight, he could even see several great white demon sharks among them. Seeing this, Tang San's heart trembled violently. Sure enough, Hulaina must have gone back to report this matter. I didn't expect them to come so quickly. The martial spirit palace really dared to come. The moment Tang San opened his mouth, Zhu Zhuqing and Bai Qinxiang had already turned into a beam of light and disappeared from where they stood. We may not be able to leave. Tang San's face was very serious. Looking at the situation, there should be a lot of people from the martial spirit palace. I've calculated that each ship of this type can carry more than 300 people. Ning Rongrong said, a conservative estimate is at least 6,000 people, and they should all be soul masters. I just don't know what level of title Douluo there are. But even if Qian Lu comes, he can't defeat Senior Possessee. On the Sea God's Island, even a yellow-robed soul master could compare to a soul emperor. A purple-clothed sea soul master would have no problem fighting one against two. Unless these 6,000 people are all elites of the martial spirit palace, and all of them are soul masters above rank 60. There were tens of thousands of soul masters in the martial spirit hall, but there shouldn't be many high-level soul masters. At this moment, a figure suddenly flew over from the distant horizon. It was a dazzling golden figure. Behind her were 6 pairs of exquisite and majestic white wings, emitting a dazzling light. Her entire body was faintly burning with a scorching golden flame. She was like a goddess of war who had walked out of the sun, dazzling and dazzling. Her beautiful face exuded a cold aura, and her pair of golden eyes were filled with anxiety. It's Qian Rinxue. Tang San's pupils shrank. This is the aura of a title Dalu. Senior Possessee said that the person who inherited the angel god should be her. The other party's aura was too obvious. But why did the other party come here immediately? At this moment, Qian Rinxue seemed to have seen the 7 people. The 7 people's hearts tightened, and they immediately prepared for battle. However, Qian Rinxue flew several meters in the air, and looked at them for a long time. She didn't seem to see the target, and then the first sentence she said stunned them. Where is Wang Feng? Everyone. Why is she looking for Brother Feng? The 7 people were a little confused. Only Ning Rongrong had a strange expression. When did Qian Rinxue know Wang Feng? Of course, they didn't know that Qian Rinxue had known Wang Feng for a long time. If they wanted to trace back, it would be when they were 6 years old. I don't know. Tang San calmly said, why didn't the martial spirit palace stay on the continent and come to the ocean sacred island instead? Are you planning to leave with your tail between your legs like last time? Qian Rinxue shook his head and looked at the 7 people. Tang San, I spared your life last time. I didn't expect you to be so lucky. You didn't get swallowed by the deep-sea monster whale. Instead, you came to the sea god's island and became the heir of the sea god. Do you also have the aura of a divine artifact? The divine artifact was, of course, the sea god's trident. Tang San's heart sank. Unfortunately, you're too weak. You should have only passed the 7th test, right? Qian Rinxue was extremely intelligent. It was obvious that she had guessed Tang San's current progress based on the information that Hulaina had given her. I'm too lazy to deal with you now. Qian Rinxue's expression turned cold. His beautiful face was full of holiness and coldness as if he had no feelings. Tell me where Wang Feng is, and I'll pretend that I didn't see you. Otherwise, don't blame me for not showing mercy. After saying that, Qian Rinxue's 9 soul rings suddenly lit up. A huge fluctuation of soul power formed a terrifying soul power pressure. The air was frozen, and even the sea water at the port was condensed. Rank 99? Tang San was stunned. He couldn't imagine the pressure brought by such a soul power fluctuation. More than 3 years ago, in the Heaven Do Imperial Palace, Qian Rinxue's strength was only a little over rank 80. 3 years and he had reached rank 99? Was the inheritance of a heavenly god so powerful? In just 3 years, Qian Rinxue had advanced more than 10 levels? Moreover, this was level 99. What was more terrifying was the aura on Qian Rinxue's body. A purple light flowed out of the purple demon eyes. Tang San vaguely saw the 5 soul bones on Qian Rinxue's body. Each of them exuded an aura that was incomparably compatible with the 6-winged angel Wuhan. What did rank 99 mean? Qian Rinxue must have passed the 7th test, or even the 8th test. She only needed one more test to become a god? Tang San couldn't imagine it. They had advanced very quickly, but Qian Rinxue didn't seem to be slow. If they waited for another 1 or 2 years, they might really face a Qian Rinxue who had become a god, but now, even if the other party had just reached rank 99, the possibility of the 7 of them joining forces to defeat her was very, very low. Why are you looking for Wang Feng? Ning Rongrong stood out and snorted. Wang Feng isn't on Sea God's Island at all. Didn't your holy lady tell you clearly? What a joke. It seems that your martial spirit palace is really afraid of Wang Feng. Qian Rinxue looked at Ning Rongrong and frowned. Are these people lying? Or is Wang Feng really not on Sea God's Island? Or is it that Wang Feng disguised himself and didn't even tell them? But it shouldn't be. Impossible, Wang Feng must be on Sea God's Island. Qian Rinxue narrowed his eyes. His cold eyes were like sharp blades, emitting waves of cold light. This woman is a little annoying. The next moment, a golden giant sword burning with golden flames suddenly appeared in Qian Rinxue's hand. 9 soul rings on his body flickered, 7 black and 2 red. Immediately after, Qian Rinxue casually slashed towards Ning Rongrong. The golden flame sword mark, that was more than 10 meters long, seemed to burn the air and fell down with the momentum of splitting the air. End of this chapter. Chapter 8:23. Ning Rongrong's face turned pale, and she hurriedly retreated. This Qian Rinxue from the Martial Soul Hall, why did he attack without saying anything? Tang San stood out immediately. His trident had already appeared in his hand, and his blue-silver emperor domain was instantly released. Countless blue-silver grass formed an iron wall in front of him. Dai Mubai didn't even have time to use his martial soul possession. He directly used his 6th soul skill, White Tiger Annihilation, his strongest single-target attack. A white energy light in the shape of the word kill blasted towards the golden sword scar. At the same time, Ma Hongjun, who had a tacit understanding with him, also used the Phoenix Cloud-Piercing Strike, his strongest single-target soul skill at the moment. Like a phoenix soaring into the sky, a pillar of fire diagonally pierced through the clouds and blasted towards the golden flame sword scar. The moment the 2 attacks came into contact with the golden sword scar, an incomparably blazing air current exploded. However, the golden flame sword scar only slowed down slightly and showed no signs of weakening at all. Only Tang San growled. The 8 spider spears appeared on his back, and the golden trident in his hand glowed with white light. The ocean-like blue light made people feel extremely comfortable. At the same time, his 8th soul ring suddenly flickered, and a dark mirror suddenly appeared in front of him. It was Tang San's 8th soul skill, Blue-Silver Evil Realms Annihilation. It could condense a special mirror for defense. The moment the golden flame sword scar landed on the mirror, it let out a sharp piercing sound. Immediately after, the mirror shattered and quickly burned into ashes in the golden flames. But after this attack, the golden flame sword scar weakened a lot. Tang San growled and swung his sea god's trident towards the golden sword scar. Although Ning Rongrong was frightened, she immediately gave her defense and amplification, turning into 2 rays of light that landed on Tang San's body. However, Tang San still underestimated the power of Qian Rinxue's casual attack, because the sword in his opponent's hand was obviously a divine weapon. As a divine weapon, it was naturally not simple. Whether it was the Time Angel's holy sword or the sea god's trident, they were all divine weapons of the same level. But the key was that the person who used it was different. Although the Qian Rinxue had just reached level 99, it was not something that Tang San could compare to. Tang San's expression changed, and a little blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. The golden flame sword mark exploded. Although it was blocked by Neptune's trident, the impact of the explosion injured Tang San in an instant. If he hadn't passed the 7th test, he would have been done for. The strength of this Qian Rinxue is so terrifying. Was this the strength needed to pass the 8th test? Tang San knew the content of the 8th test. It was also because of the content of the 8th test that Tang San agreed to Possessi's suggestion and returned to the mainland. He planned to cultivate while observing the situation. At the same time, he could also make a trip to the Icefire Yin-Yang well to get some spiritual herbs to replenish his energy. Qian Rinxue, who had passed the 8th test, was terrifyingly powerful. Tang San kept retreating, his feet leaving a trail on the ground. His face was slightly pale. However, Tang San realized that Possessi's attack, which was similar to Zhu Zhuqing's and Dai Mubai's, might have directly shaken him into Huanjin and broken his entire body. However, Qian Rinxue's attack only caused him internal injuries. The difference was very obvious. It seemed that there was a difference of level 99 as well. It seems that you've improved a lot in the past 3 years on Sea God's Island. Qian Rinxue looked at Tang San, who was bleeding from the corner of his mouth, and said calmly, "Tell me, where is Wang Feng? Otherwise, I won't hold back next time." Hearing that, everyone's expression changed. Qian Rinxue's strength was completely beyond their imagination. In fact, Tang San could understand because Qian Rinxue had already reached level 80 more than 3 years ago and participated in the God level assessment. Even they had improved by more than 20 levels. It was understandable that Qian Rinxue had improved by more than 10 levels. Brother Feng didn't come to see God's Island. Tang San took the sausage made by Oscar and quickly ate it. Then, he drank the white beer made by Xunlingqi and said calmly, "Even if you kill us, we don't know where Brother Feng is. But he's definitely not on Sea God's Island." That was the truth. In fact, even if Wang Feng was really on Sea God's Island, they couldn't tell him. Back then, Brother Feng had ruined 2 of the Martial Spirit Palace's major plans. It could be said that the Martial Spirit Palace's conspiracy was ruined. Tang San could understand why the Martial Spirit Palace viewed Brother Feng as a thorn in their side. Qian Rinxue sneered in his heart. These 7 people were the closest to Wang Feng. How could they not know? However, their relationship was deep. They would rather die than tell him. "Wang Feng, you're quite good at buying people's feelings. Then prepare to die. I'll kill you all. I believe he'll come out." Qian Rinxue's eyes narrowed. She had to find Wang Feng in advance. Otherwise, Tang San and the others would be overwhelmed by the Martial Spirit Palace's army. Wang Feng wouldn't have a chance to escape, even if this was Sea God's Island. What's more, the successor of the Sea God was Tang San. He wasn't Wang Feng. Sea God's Island couldn't protect Wang Feng at all. If I pretend to kill Tang San and the others, Wang Feng will definitely not be able to resist and take action, Qian Rinxue thought in his heart. I'll take this opportunity to force Wang Feng out. Let's see how that bastard can hide. Thinking of this, Qian Rinxue's body suddenly burned with golden flames. The boundless golden domain instantly suppressed Tang San's blue-silver domain. The complete suppression of soul power was also fully reflected in the domain. Tang San's blue-silver domain had evolved many times, especially after absorbing the first God-bestowed soul ring. It also gained a soul skill, omniscient nature, which was very powerful. Tang San had seen Qian Rinxue's angel domain when they fought in the Heaven Do Imperial Palace. He knew that his current blue-silver domain was stronger than the angel domain. However, The difference in soul power was too terrifying. Back then on Sea God Mountain, the 7 of them were instantly crushed by Possessi. That scene was still vivid in his mind. At this time, Qian Rinxue was the same. Moreover, Qian Rinxue had a divine artifact that could make up for the gap between him and Possessi. At this time, they were still missing Zhu Zhuqing. 7 as 1. Tang San shouted, "Don't give her a chance." The 7 of them were extremely tacit. Like a long dragon, they poured all their soul power into Tang San. However, at this time, the Golden Angel domain instantly suppressed Tang San's blue-silver domain. It was covered by endless golden light. The 7 of them instantly felt an obstruction in their soul power, and it was difficult to transfer it to Tang San. They couldn't help but be shocked. Even the soul power in their bodies began to become empty. It was the result of their soul power being melted. Their bodies were also extremely heavy, and their strength had decreased by a lot. The 7 of them were shocked. Possessi was restricted from using her domain that day. If she used her domain now, all 7 of them would die with a light stomp of her foot. It's futile. How smart was Qian Rinxue? Naturally, she could tell that the 7 of them wanted to join forces. With her domain, she directly destroyed their plan. End of this chapter. Chapter 8:24. She raised the golden flame sword high and shouted coldly, "Wang Feng, if you don't come out now, your companions are going to die." Silence. It was extremely quiet. Qian Rinxue frowned, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. The next moment, the holy sword in her hand burned with a golden flame that was dozens of meters high. It burned the void and made crackling sounds. At this moment, a blue beam of light came directly from afar. It bombarded the golden flame in Qian Rinxue's hand. Qian Rinxue's face changed, and a golden light burst out from his body. He immediately retreated and looked at the distance with great vigilance. Possessi was flying in the air far away, followed by the 7 saint pillars. Her face was extremely calm. The group of people seemed to be far away, but their bodies were shining with a layer of blue light. In an instant, they had arrived in front of everyone. Obviously, this attack was launched by Possessi. Possessi. Qian Rinxue's face changed. Looking at the woman, his heart sank slightly. He was not afraid. It was just that Possessi had appeared. It would be difficult to find out information about Tang San by threatening Tang San and the others. She was not a god yet. She had just stepped into level 99, and she had not even fully adapted to this huge power. Otherwise, Tang San would have been seriously injured by the golden flame sword mark just now. He might even be forced to reveal his true body. How many years has it been? People of the Martial Spirit Palace still dare to step into the Sea God's Island? Possessi floated in the air, and her cold eyes fell on Qian Rinxue. Behind her, the 7 saint pillars were in a protective position. Her martial spirit was released, and it was shining brilliantly. It was as if it could swallow the rivers. After Possessi finished speaking, she glanced at Tang San. The scepter in her hand shook, and an invisible force seemed to merge with the aura of the 7 saint pillars behind her. It formed an invisible wave that covered the sky and covered the Qian Rinxue. This boundless aura formed a unique Sea God's domain. The Sea God's domain merged with the aura of the 7 saint pillars and was strengthened by the aura of the 7 saint pillars. It was even stronger than when he fought Wang Wu. Qian Rinxue let out a muffled groan. His angelic domain was quickly compressed. His face turned pale, as if he had been stunned by the invisible wave. His mind was greatly shaken, and he was sent flying. Ha ha! Possessi, it has been 30 years since we last met. I didn't expect you to still be as elegant as before. Behind him, a golden and gentle light enveloped the Qian Rinxue from afar, stopping the Qian Rinxue from retreating. The forceful voice caused the sky to tremble violently, causing countless clouds to scatter. One could imagine how powerful his aura was, and how shocking it was. Possessy focused his gaze on a small dot of light in the distance. Before the person arrived, the voice arrived first. The sky seemed to be covered by a layer of shackles. Possessy and the others could feel the dense energy in the sky, as if it had been imprisoned. Is it the head consecrator of the martial spirit palace, Thousand Daos Lu? Below, Tang San and the others looked at each other. The martial spirit palace actually sent this head consecrator? Although they had never seen Thousand Daos Lu, they had heard Master mention it before. He was one of the 3 peerless Douluo in the world. In Tang San's knowledge, he was a peerless figure who was as famous as his great-grandfather. Possessy had also told him about the past. In the sky, Thousand Daos Lu was invincible. On land, Tang Chen was invincible. In the sea, Possessy was invincible. In the distance, the golden dot of light appeared beside Qian Rinxue as if it had teleported. At the same time, there were also 7 titled Douluo behind him. Guiju, Snake Spear Thorny Pufferfish, Qianjun Demon Vanquisher, and a control-type Purple Pine Dalu. Perhaps it was the first time they had seen Thousand Daos Lu, a legendary figure on the continent. But in reality, he looked just like a dignified and well-proportioned old man. He wore a light golden robe and his eyes sparkled with golden lightning. He had a faint smile on his face. When his gaze fell on Bai Sai, there was a hint of reminiscence and sorrow. "Grandpa, we didn't find him," Qian Rinxue said indifferently. "None of Wang Feng's companions were told, even if they died. Maybe Wang Feng really isn't on the island." Thousand Daos Lu glanced at Tang San and the others and smiled faintly. "It doesn't matter. Even if he really isn't here, we can capture him and ask him slowly." Speaking of this, Thousand Daos Lu looked at Possessy and said with a calm tone, "Anyway, none of you can escape today." Hearing this, Possessy couldn't help but smile. "Thousand Daos Lu, after not seeing you for so many years, your arrogant and conceited nature really hasn't changed at all. Not to mention that you were defeated by me back then. Decades ago, your martial spirit palace also lost thousands of soul masters on my sea god island. Today you're here again?" As he said that, in the forest behind Possessy there was a commotion. Thousands of well-trained soul masters seemed to have already gathered. There were purple-clothed soul masters, yellow-clothed leaders, and white-clothed soul masters. They seemed to be in small teams and not randomly assigned. "Cut the crap," Thousand Daos Lu said coldly. "Possessy, I don't want to make things difficult for you. You can leave by yourselves and hand over that brat called Wang Feng. We will also take these 9 people away. I can make them not take a single step into the Sea God Island." Thousand Daos Lu glanced at Tang San and the others. His meaning was obvious. Try peaceful means before resorting to force. Possessy smiled, and the scepter in his hand shook slightly. In an instant, waterfall-like torrents suddenly rose from the surrounding sea. It was a few hundred meters tall, forming a giant semicircular water shield that enveloped the entire Sea God Island. It was as if this area was isolated from the outside world. Those ships that had yet to enter the range of the Sea God Island were all isolated. "Then let me see if your strength has improved after a few decades." Possessy snorted coldly. The Sea God's martial spirit appeared directly, and the 9 blue lights that were slowly being enveloped seemed to reflect each other's colors. Thousand Daos Lu narrowed his eyes and smiled. "I really want to see how strong you are now." The auras of the 2 peerless Douluo were like barrels of gunpowder that could ignite at a touch. There were too many feelings and resentments between the 2 of them. Although the 2 of them slowly faded with the passage of time, they didn't disappear in reality. But now it had become the fuse. In the next moment, the 2 of them disappeared from their original positions at the same time. The entire sky seemed to shake. That water blue light shield actually had a certain effect of restricting the air. However, it wasn't very effective against Thousand Daos Lu, and at the same time, it weakened his strength to a certain extent. That was a special energy shield that the sea god had once set up on the sea god island. In times of crisis, it could help the sea god island defend against external attacks. At the same time, it was equivalent to an additional domain, similar to the Massacre God domain in the City of Massacre. End of chapter. Chapter 825. It would weaken those who attacked from the inside to a certain extent. Only the scepter in Possessi's hand could activate it. The two of them turned into a ray of golden light and a ray of blue light as they clashed in midair. Although they seemed to be in midair, the current environment was unfavorable to Thousand Dao Flow and Qianrenshu. The seven titled Douluo were also unfavorable to the seven titled Dalu. Once the battle between the peerless Douluo broke out, the entire sky was shaken into countless streams of mist. Countless amounts of water vapor were evaporated, and the sky within a few hundred meters was dyed into a cloud. The people below could only faintly see the two figures intertwining in the cloud like flowing light. At the same time, the seven saint pillars locked onto the seven titled Douluo of the martial spirit hall. Without any hesitation, they charged towards the seven of them. The special energy barrier around the sea god's island was not invincible. It had a duration. They could only seize the time to quickly get rid of the seven titled Douluo and Thousand Dao Flow. They had to weaken the martial spirit hall as much as possible. Otherwise, it would be very troublesome when the people from the martial spirit hall attacked. On the contrary, they just had to get rid of Thousand Dao Flow and the others. Even if the people from the martial spirit hall attacked, they would only be mid-tier and high-tier soul masters. They would not be able to gain any advantage at all. Only the titled Douluo could affect the situation of the battle. Between the seven saint pillars and the seven titled Douluo of the martial spirit hall, the martial spirit hall was definitely superior in terms of soul power. But in fact, the environment of this place determined that the seven saint pillars were slightly stronger. It could be said that Possessi was indeed prepared for this. He did not hastily fight. Qianrenshu immediately targeted Tang San. Qianrenshu was not seriously injured by Possessi's attack just now. He had even almost recovered by now. Seeing the Qianrenshu attack, Zhu Zhuqing and Bai Qinxiang, who had already returned, were naturally not afraid. "I'll give you one last chance," Qianrenshu whispered. "Tell me where Wang Feng is." Although the current situation was not optimistic for the martial spirit palace. However, Qianrenshu knew that as long as that woman made a move, everything would turn into smoke. Possessi wanted to take care of them, but they were also exhausting the strength of the sea god's island. Tang San and the other 8 people were silent for a while, with cold smiles on their faces. Only Zhu Zhuqing frowned as she looked at the Qianrenshu. She felt that something was wrong. Judging from the woman's tone, she did not seem to want to deal with Wang Feng. Instead, she seemed to want to help him? Zhu Zhuqing shook her head. How was that possible? It was impossible for this Qianrenshu to know Wang Feng. "Let's fight!" Tang San shouted coldly. With the combined strength of the 9 of them, they might not be able to defeat Qianrenshu, but as long as they could stall him, it might not be impossible. At this time, many of the sea soul cultivators in the forest walked out in formation. Led by the purple-clothed sea soul cultivator, they formed a team of 7 people, with 2 control, 2 support, and 3 close combat. Whether it was the battle between Qianrenshu and Possessi or the battle between the 14 titled Douluo, they were not qualified to participate in it. Moreover, they needed to preserve their strength. After the energy shield was broken, they would have to face the many soul cultivators of the martial spirit palace. However, if Tang San, as the heir of the sea god, could not hold on, they would also be in great danger. If necessary, they would also lend a hand. Qianrenshu's expression was cold. These people really refused a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. However, in such a situation, would Wang Feng still not come out? Or was it that Wang Feng was extremely confident in his companions? Thinking of this, the holy sword in Qian Rinxue's hand was like a rainbow. Golden light flashed in his eyes, and his whole body burned with golden flames again. He attacked Tang San and the others. She wanted to defeat these 9 people in the shortest time. If she could not get an answer, she would directly rush into the sea god's island. Furious waves, desperate situation. Since Wang Feng refined the Longying coral into 3 soul crystals, he had been immersed in cultivation and crazily absorbing the energy in the soul crystals. According to Wang Feng's calculation, it would take at least half a month to completely absorb the 3 soul crystals. However, in fact, because his absorption speed would become faster after absorbing the soul crystals, he only needed 13 days to finish absorbing them. He had really reached rank 80. At the end of the day, an immortal herb was still an immortal herb. Even though it was small and had all sorts of negative effects, it was still the most suitable immortal herb for Wang Feng. After refining it into a soul crystal, it was perfect for him to use it to break through the ranks of his soul power. After reaching rank 80, Wang Feng was still not in good condition. He still closed his eyes tightly, as if he was stabilizing his rank 80 soul power. In fact, Wang Feng was trying to use all his soul power to break through the 8th form of the chaotic green lotus. After some time, Wang Feng slowly opened his eyes. A strange white light flashed in his eyes, and at the same time, he frowned slightly. Is the martial spirit hall already here? Wang Feng looked at the clouds in the distance, and his face fell. There are still at least 2 or 3 months before the 3-year deadline. I didn't expect the martial spirit hall to attack the sea god's island ahead of schedule. Bibidan is a very rational person. She usually won't ruin her own plans. Is there a reason why they are attacking so early? Wang Feng did not have time to think. He stood up immediately. In the waves below, the 3 great white demon soul sharks were growling at Wang Feng. In exchange, Wang Feng had to help them become 100,000-year soul beasts. However, Wang Feng had been focused on absorbing the soul crystals these days. He did not focus on training the sharks. He originally planned to train them after absorbing the soul crystals. But now that the martial spirit hall had attacked the sea god's island ahead of schedule, he had to put this matter aside for now. Although he had cultivated too much, Wang Feng's mind was very clear now. Looking at the blue light barrier in the sky, Wang Feng was faintly worried. In the distance, due to the momentum of the battle, a 5-colored rainbow appeared in the sky. Countless soul skills, martial soul fusion skills, domains and fusion skills were unleashed on this rainbow, adding a different color to it. However, the actual situation was very obvious. The powerful people of the Sea God's Island, led by Possessi, had gained a great advantage. There was no other reason. The enhancement provided by this special energy shield was too strong. For titled Douluo, even a little boost was enough to determine the winner, let alone this energy barrier that was once set up by the sea god. It was almost visible to the naked eye that the 7 titled Douluo of the Martial Spirit Hall were showing signs of defeat from the battle between the 1,000 Streams and Possessi in the sky. However, in comparison, Tang San and the other 8 people were in a tough battle. It could be said that they were about to be defeated. In the face of the level 99 Qianrenxue, even if they had not become gods, the 9 of them together were no match for him. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.